Hello, everyone. My name is Apostate Aladdin. Welcome to the live stream. The purpose of today's live stream is to speak with Muslim callers to tell me what they believe, presumably Islam, and why they believe it to be true. I've had a lot of these types of streams in the past, and they've went generally pretty well. But I have decided that starting next week, I'm going to start live streaming exclusively on Wednesday if I can help it. So every Wednesday, expect there to be a live stream. Maybe there'll be generic topics, so I'll take callers from all sorts of backgrounds, or maybe they'll be specialized. I haven't decided on that yet, but just expect it to be every Wednesday at some time or another. I post about them on my community tab, and I also put them on my Instagram stories, so that's how you know that one is coming. And doesn't hurt to check the channel every Tuesday and see what's coming next. So starting next week, every Wednesday, unless I'm away from my desk. So, with that out of the way, I wanted to reiterate what the purpose of today's live stream is. Today, I am taking callers from believers, specifically believers in the religion of Islam, to discuss what they believe and why. We already have 3 callers in queue. MashaAllah, it's a very good turnout today. Maybe it's good timing. If you would like to join, link is pinned to the live chat as of right now. Might close the queue very soon. And just give me a brief introduction in the private chat of who you are and what you'd like to talk about, so I know who I'm bringing on. What else? What else? Oh yeah, and I wanted to mention I started doing short videos, shorts, trying to focus on those a little bit more. So I've already released one recently, and I'll try to put a timestamp to that, or one of those cards that show up here. But also just go to my shorts tab on my channel, and you'll find it. It's part 1 of a 2-part series. So tell me what you think of it. If you want more short videos, let me know in the comments. And as always, whatever you like or dislike, let me know in the comments. Give it a like, thumbs up, all that good stuff, because that's the kind of feedback that I need. And okay, so we've got 3 callers in queue. Just for their reference, I've got Critical, Ibn Qayyim, and Ryan Leaf in that order. So without further ado, I'm going to start by taking the first caller, Critical. Critical, I hope you're ready, because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Aladdin. How are you? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad, man. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm happy to have you.
Thank you. So yeah, I just want to say first and foremost before we begin with regards to the topics, etc. Normally I would kind of not partake in these kind of things, mainly because I feel like, with these kind of things, perhaps it won't be as productive. There are some ex-Muslims, etc., on YouTube, and so be it, who I feel like they have quite an ego where it's difficult to have a nice, productive conversation with them. But from what I've seen from you, the reason why I've taken exception to that is because, despite our differences, you do come across as someone who does maintain respect, and I really appreciate that, man. Despite our differences, we may have very severe differences even. The mere fact that we can come together and have a dialogue respectfully, it really means a lot to especially someone like me, because we live at a time where people have egos nowadays. People want to constantly battle and win over each other, win points over each other. But I respect that, so I just want to let you know that to give you my respect.
I really appreciate you saying that, and yeah, thank you for saying that. I'll pay you for that after the stream. That was very
No, not at all. No, Tim, it's just like, for me, it's I have to be sincere. You have to give credit where credit is due, even if it's, let's say, to my worst enemy. Even if there's a good trait about him, it's important that we're sincere, and hopefully, throughout this conversation, I'm someone who's respectful as well, and sincere. And please correct me if you think in any way I've said something out of line, or I'm rude. It's not my intention to be rude at all. Maybe I might get a bit passionate, but please forgive me beforehand.
Well, I appreciate that, and yeah, not to worry. I think most people are pretty civil, and I don't take offense very easily to things. So I have a feeling this is going to go just fine. So
Thank
again,
you.
I appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad that you still find it possible to have this conversation with me, despite, obviously, like you said, I try to be respectful to the people that I speak to, but I also, I make critical commentary about Islam that is very
Sure. Yeah,
blasphemous,
yeah.
right? But I appreciate that you can see that distinction. So yeah, what would you like to talk about today? What is it that you believe and why?
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, yeah, I'm a Muslim, born and raised. I've never, I guess you can say, left Islam. You know, there's some Muslims, they had a phase, they became atheists, and they came back. I never really went through that. What I would say firstly is every Muslim, there comes a point in time whether they should decide whether they want to be a Muslim or not. So we all go through that period of, you know, studying, etc. For me, it was especially here in London, secondary school even, you know, I did triple science, etc. So I've looked into science heavily, and I've seen, you know, whether religion is really necessary, things like that. And I found myself to be very content with Islam. And the main reasons for that, there's various reasons, but obviously, number one, I believe the Quran is no doubt the word of God. I also believe Islam, it provides like the perfect kind of structure, this perfect kind of manual guide and instructions to live your life in the most fulfilling way possible, and not just as an individual, but also as a community, you know, coming together and trying to provide a good, functionable society as well. And you know, one thing I've found that, you know, a lot of people really, you know, struggle with in terms of, you know, understanding Islam, etc., is, you know, various topics. For example, I think one thing you made a video on whatnot, it was like the free will and determinism kind of, you know, you was having a discussion about that, and to me, I completely understand where he was coming from as well. I know some people, they have issues with you know, certain things within the Quran, and or let's say the hadiths, whether it be the rulings about apostasy, etc. So maybe we can have like a discussion on these kind of things, kind of go one by one, if possible.
I'm not opposed to that per se. Well, sorry, I forgot to put you on screen. I'm not opposed to that per se, but I would like to start by talking about what you had mentioned earlier about why you believe in Islam. And you said the first is obviously that the Quran is the word of God. That is one reason why you believe in Islam as the religion. And the second is that it provides perfect structure for fulfilling life and for society. So I'd like to ask you about the first one. So it's a reason for your belief that the Quran is the word of God, but how do you determine that it is the word of God?
Sure. So the way I determine whether the Quran is the word of God is firstly, number one, the actual content of the Quran. When you look at it, does it have any contradictions? Are there very clear errors? Is it prescribing something which is unjust? Or does it prescribe things in which, you know, throughout time, it shouldn't be just for one particular time? I mean, if this is the creator we're talking about, right, he can't just provide a manual guide for only one particular type of people for one particular time. No, if it's truly the words from the creator, it should be timeless. It should be all throughout the times. Something which is clear, a rulings, which provides a healthier society. There should be no contradictions. There should be no errors. The God, you know, can't be saying, you know, to do something which is unjust, which is inhumane, which is corrupt, which is evil. And for me personally, I don't see any of that within the Quran, and I find rather the opposite. I find very beautiful things about the Quran, many beautiful things in how to live your life, in rulings on certain things, like legislations, etc. And I find myself agreeing with a lot of them. For me personally, I know other people, you know, like yourself, etc., you may not feel comfortable, but it kind of just ticks my boxes, I guess you can say. And so that's why I'm a proud Muslim.
Well, I would like to ask some questions about that, because the list that you had mentioned for why you believe that the Quran is a book from God, it's ironically enough pretty much the same list that someone like myself would mention for the reasons why the Quran is not a book from God.
Of course,
It's
of course,
that, yeah. So like to take one example, there's no contradictions in it. Not only can, you know, a critic point out contradictions, and then we would have to ask, well, who's the objective judge on that matter? But also the issue with the Quran not having contradictions in it, it's almost a non sequitur. Like if a book doesn't have contradictions in it, does that mean that it automatically is divine?
No, that's just not one factor alone. So, for example, there's books out there that don't have contradictions in it. Doesn't mean that it's divine. This was just one particular factor I'm saying. So I'm saying if it did have contradictions, then it's questionable. This cannot be from God, because that would be a flaw, right? A contradiction is a flaw. And God should produce something that is flawless. So I'm just merely stating that is one factor. Not one factor alone, no doubt, because there's many other writers out there. There's no contradictions in their book. Doesn't mean that they're God, you know?
Okay, I see what you mean. So it's more of like an elimination
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
criteria.
I'm just trying to give like a short, because obviously this call, I don't know how long we can be on the call, but I'm trying to keep it. I'm trying to be as concise as possible and not like waffle too much.
No,
Let
I
me know if I
understand.
am. Yeah,
No, that's all good. I'm
but
trying to understand the criteria itself, because so you're using it more as like as an exclusion criteria, meaning if you find a flaw, then it can't be from God.
it
But a book
can't.
can be
Yeah, exactly.
flawless or free of contradiction. Let's not even talk about flaws, but just contradicting itself.
Yeah.
A book can be free of that and still not be a book from God. Um, but then how do you determine, like every time that someone points out a contradiction in the Quran,
Hmm.
um, are you able to acknowledge that, or would that make you automatically a kafir?
No, so if there are contradictions within the Quran, right, then the person who, I mean, to them they see it's a clear contradiction, right, and it's within the scripture, then I would ask, why is this a scripture for you to follow? So, for example, if I see clear contradictions within the Quran, I would be questioning, saying, how can God do such a thing? So it depends, obviously, what kind of Muslim. Firstly, there are some Muslims who knows, there maybe are Muslims who have blind faith, and which is not good, which Islam doesn't encourage. So even if there were, let's just say hypothetically, there were contradictions, they will just turn a blind eye to it, and that's wrong. We should be sincere. If there are contradictions or errors, we should be, sincere enough to say, you know what, this, how can this be from God? Do you know what I mean? Whereas there are some Muslims, let's say there are, whether it's Christians or whatnot, they bring up a contradiction. Well, to them, what seems a contradiction. There's Muslims out there, they can perfectly explain that. Do you know what? It's not a contradiction. It's basically this was a particular time,
That's
but then the rules was
that's the
different.
point. Okay, that's a good point. So two
Yeah, yeah.
points that you just touched on right here. One, that it's for a particular time and the rules are different. That contradicts it being timeless. But also, the like you said, every time there's a contradiction pointed out by someone else, there's always a
Mhm.
Muslim who can explain it away. But that's because by definition, if they couldn't explain it away, they wouldn't be Muslims. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand, but we're assuming that like their pure intention is that the only reason why they're explaining it is because they're trying to cling on to their faith and not because they're genuinely providing a valid explanation. So maybe the explanation is actually valid. And for those Muslims who do try, let's say explain something which, let's say hypothetically is completely wrong, but they still try to explain it anyway, then this is obviously insincere. Like we find this with certain, for example, me personally, I've came across certain Christians. Christians contradict one another. Some Christians will say, no, he's a Catholic. No, don't listen to him. No, no, no. So some people within Christianity, I mean, there's some things within Christianity, I'm sure me and you both can agree, which is quite horrific. But because of, their love for the community, because of how much maybe they love, I don't know, singing in the church or something, they'll try to justify it anyway. Even though it's very clear, like, this is wrong. I think within the Bible, it says something like, you can even kill infants or something.
Well, about that, don't
Yeah.
you see that it's ironic that someone can say the same exact thing about Islam and Muslims?
No, sure. That's what people can say, that 100%. People can say what they wish. It's just about whether it's true or not, which is my
Well,
point.
how do
So,
you know? But that's what I mean here. So when a Christian is doing that, you can see
mm,
that they're in some sort of denial, or they're trying to cover up for a problem in the religion. But
mm,
if a Muslim were to do that, you would see as no, they have an explanation. It's not that they're covering up a problem and they're not in
great,
denial.
great question. So this
Mhm.
is where I'd say a critical study of both books and the comparisons, looking into context, etc. We have to. It matters. For example, for me to come to a conclusion about something within the Bible, let's say is unjust or it's unfair, I have to give it's fair right as well. I can't have double standards where, I'll turn a blind eye to something within the Quran, but then with the Bible, I'm super extra critical. This isn't fair. We
No,
have to, yeah,
that's what I mean. If
yeah, exactly, yeah.
what I mean is, if you
Mhm.
see, you can say right now that there is no contradiction in the Quran
Yeah,
so confidently, right? Even though, and I don't blame you for this, but even though you clearly haven't examined every single possible contradiction in the Quran, and I don't expect you to, right? As a
sure, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Just like from my experiences, I haven't came across any, and like, I always am someone who's sincere and open enough. Like, if someone presents me something, I'll never say no, you're wrong, even though I don't know. I always say, okay, give me some time. I'm gonna look.
are you still there? Can the chat hear me, or can they hear the caller, or neither of us? I think you're back. Yeah. So what I was trying to say is, are you there? That's not what I was trying to say, but
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Now you're back.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. Sorry, one
No
second.
worries.
Yes, no, sorry. So what I was saying is, let's say someone wants to bring me what they would deem a contradiction. I'll never just say no, no, I don't want to see it. What I'll do, and I'm a sincere person, I'll say, okay, give me some time. Let me look into this. I'm going to research this matter, and believe me, I'm not afraid to leave my religion. If it's wrong, if it's not the truth, then why would I not leave it?
I
Why would I?
appreciate that
Yeah,
outlook on it. But
yeah.
how do you? My question is, how do you determine that, or doesn't it seem suspicious to you that any Christian bringing up an issue with Islam is obviously wrong, but any let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Isn't it obvious to you that any problem pointed out in Christianity could be actually a problem, but any problem pointed out in Islam is obviously not a problem because Islam is flawless? Don't you see how it's the same exact view from the other side?
The thing is for me to come to that conclusion, I would have to know every single problem. So I don't dismiss a possibility where a Christian can bring me, like, let's say, a problem within the Quran. If there was a problem that a Christian brought me, which I thought, do you know what, this is a genuine problem, then this is a matter I'm going to have to look in. And if it means at the end of the day that this is not the word from God, then ultimately, I'm sure any person. Sorry, hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but
Yeah,
I
sure.
think I got most of what you said. I appreciate
Yeah,
that outlook that you have on belief, and that you're willing to change your mind if you come across a compelling reason to.
yeah.
So I want to ask you something about that then. So can you understand, for example, can you acknowledge that there are Christians or non-Muslims out there who are sincere in their search and sincere in their questioning, but they don't believe in Islam?
Oh, absolutely, 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 100%. And there are, and we find actually, like me personally, I have many friends who are clearly sincere. They don't have no agenda. Normal human beings, just simple 9 to 5. They come home, they research, they question their purpose. No doubt, no doubt, Aladdin. There are very many sincere people, and I found even many of my close friends, the ones who are very kind-hearted. Well, obviously, many of them, they became Muslim themselves, and there's other people, they're not Muslim as of yet, and I'm not going to rush them. It's their own time, it's their own journey, and yeah, 100%, man. I definitely agree with you there.
So what do you think? What do you think Islam says happens to those people in the afterlife?
Sure. So with Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never do something that is unjust, because one of his names is just about being the most just. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge everyone in a case by case basis, whether they receive the message or not, whether maybe they received the message, but the message that they were actually given, it wasn't given correctly. There was actually some things that was false. So I believe Allah will deal with them. They'll be given their own trial, their own test in some form, and they'll be dealt with accordingly in a just manner, never in an unjust way.
I always hear that being said, that Allah isn't going to deal with each person because you don't know if they got the correct message and so on. But if building on what you said earlier, that you acknowledge some people sincerely, they don't believe despite getting the correct message, despite seeing all the same information, and they're sincere in their search, and they don't believe, right? So that I find is the biggest case. It's not about Islam getting to them corrupted or not the right message, but people are just not convinced because they have because they have their own biases, or because Islam is not actually as convincing to an outsider as some believers think. So in that case, if you think that God deals with each person on their case by case basis, do you also agree that belief is in Islam one of the main criteria for entering heaven or hell?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. My family are going in and out, so I'm trying to speak with you whilst trying
No
to manage.
worries.
Sorry, bear with me.
Are you there?
Yeah, hello, Aladdin. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I don't know, so please bear with me. Sorry. Because the reception and stuff is very bad. Sorry, I'm just in the car right now, so Sorry, could you give me just like 10 seconds if you mind?
Sure, yeah. In the meantime, I want to read this comment by Car Services. This is the opposite kind of the position that the caller was taking, right? The caller is saying, I'm open to change my mind. This commenter was saying, I'm definitely never going to change my mind. And also, while we're waiting for Critical Thinker, I want to thank Stop Scamming Man. Thank you for the super chat. They're saying, your video on Al-Khidr was excellent, something that has largely fallen under the radar of critical discourse. The story is likely a deliberately bad parody of a grim fairy tale. Will you maybe do a similar video on Sulaiman? Got it. I will try to do Sulaiman at some point in the near future. Hey, Critical Thinker, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Thank you. So I'm trying to find like good reception. It's a bit difficult because I'm going outside at the same time. But yeah, no, sorry. So if you could repeat your last question for me, please.
Sure. So I was saying, you mentioned that God's going to deal with each person depending on their situation and so on, and is going to be just with them. But that goes against the criteria for going to heaven being a believer and going to hell, being a non-believer. So in other words, a good person who's sincere in their search and all that stuff still can't go to heaven if they're not a believer.
Okay, I'll ask you a question. Are there any Muslims that will go to hell?
Possibly, yeah. But as far as I understand, they don't go forever. But even then, I don't see how it ties into the question.
So with regards to whether they're good, you're saying that there's disbelievers, people who don't believe in Islam, but they're good. That's what you're saying, right? So where will they go? Is it fair if they still go to hell? Well, you don't know what they do behind the scenes. You're not with them 24/7. So you may get the impression that, these are very good people. But at the end of the day, you don't know them. Whereas a creator who actually does know everything that you do, right? I believe he will be a better person to judge rather than someone like me and you who are very limited knowledge and who only get to see people for a limited amount of time. You may not see their true self,
Wait, we got to be careful of this because this seems like a categorical classification here that you're saying. Well, basically what you're saying, not to put words in your mouth, you're saying a disbeliever is going to go to hell, and it makes sense because they're probably doing things behind our back that we don't know.
Yeah, not just that alone, not even behind the back, even in the open as well. What we say is that God is the one who judges, because then I'll ask you, to what rules can we judge someone? What is the rule book that we are using? By what guidelines are we using? So as someone who's a Muslim, we obviously use the Quran and Sunnah. We believe that the rules should be made and established by a creator, not by us human beings. So whilst we may judge someone by our own moral code, right?
So you're saying it's fair because it's by the code that God judges by, which
right, and ultimately we believe that God, He's the most just. So that's it. Yeah.
But don't you see how circular that is? So in a different kind of situation, you acknowledge that a good person can disbelieve, right? A good person, a sincere person can disbelieve, but you simultaneously acknowledge that they deserve hell because God said so.
No. This is the thing. Okay, I think this is a misunderstanding. No, I'm saying a good person may not be in belief because, for example, let me just give you one quick example right now, right? A person may not be a Muslim. They might not testify that there is only one God but Allah, but maybe they're mentally not stable. There are some people that they are insane. This is just one little example I'm just quickly giving you. They have, their sanity,
But I'm not looking for edge cases. I'm not
I'm just giving you one quick example. So that's just one. Number two, the people who haven't been delivered the message correctly, who says that they can't go to heaven?
Like that's also an edge case that I'm not talking about. I mean, people who did receive, like you acknowledged earlier, someone can hear Islam properly and not believe, right?
The thing is, we believe those people, any good person, good heart, sincere people, they become Muslim. They will become Muslim anyway. So this
that's
is
what I was trying to get at. So that's the earlier question that I think you might want to amend the answer then. So can a good-hearted, sincere person not believe?
Yeah, no, as of right now, of course they cannot believe. There's people who are born and raised as not believing, and they're good and sincere people. That's why I gave you the example of my friends, remember? They don't believe. Right now, many of them, they don't believe. But if you ask me, are these good-hearted people? I would say from what I see, they seem very good-hearted and whatnot. Even my friends who became Muslim, I'm telling you right now, I couldn't tell you one exact flaw of theirs where they were very rude or dishonest. Very nice people, very nice brothers of mine. and they just happen to become a
just
Muslim anyway.
that goes against
Yeah.
what you just said earlier, right? That anyone who's good-hearted and honest and receives the message of Islam will believe.
No,
But you just yeah.
anyone who's how where's the contradiction? Could you explain that to me?
So you just I think you're acknowledging that a good person, a good, open-hearted, honest person might
Yeah.
not be a believer, right? They can receive the correct message and not be a believer. Is that correct?
Yeah. They can be a good-hearted person and they may not believe in the message, but we believe that they will believe eventually, and that God will
No,
guide them.
but many
Or
people die without believing in Islam. Like, are you saying they will
yeah.
believe? All of them will have to die a Muslim. So you're basically saying they don't exist as someone who died a kafir.
No, what I'm saying is any person who is genuinely good-hearted and sincere, and they do that which is, and they want to seek the truth, right? And they want to, see what their purpose is and their research, etc. And by the way, this is actually stipulated within the Quran, and this is one reason why it links very well to, the predestined versus free will argument, right? And the reason why is, if you don't mind, I can share a verse with you. Is that okay, or?
Sure.
Sure. In the Quran, sorry, I'm in the class. I'm just trying to think. It's Oh yeah, sorry. No, so I'm just gonna if you put sorry, Aladdin, just bear with me 5 seconds. I'm just telling my brother-in-law the address.
Sure. Yeah. Don't dox yourself. Keep that muted. So what I'm
Yeah,
trying.
sorry.
Yes.
So that it's chapter 16, verse 105, right? And maybe we can hit the point about free will and predestined whatnot at the same time while we do this as well. So from here, within just to kind of summarize, this verse here, it talks about guidance, right? So chapter 16, verse 105, okay? And here it says basically the action in this verse is attributed to the people, okay? And Allah he used the word istighbab, which is these people who disbelieve and who aren't successful in the afterlife. These are people who love the worldly life over the afterlife. Okay, so Allah, He says this is the decision that they made.
Sorry.
Okay?
What surah and what verse?
It's chapter 16, verse 105.
Okay. So
Let me know when you put that up, and then I can we can look through it together if you want. I'm in the car right now, so I
okay. Yeah.
can't.
I'm
go through everything,
looking
but
at
I'm
the
trying to
verse.
say everything from my memory. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the verse because I think I know where this verse is going here. So, no one fabricates lies except those who disbelieve in Allah's revelation, and it is they who are the true liars. So basically saying that those who don't believe are liars.
Yeah, no, it's important. We don't generalize absolutely everyone, right? Because those who reverted, at one point, they were in disbelief, right? So it doesn't mean that every person who was in a state of disbelief will always be liars forever. But there are people out there who they may lie upon the Quran, or they may lie on religion, or they choose the worldly life, etc. Yes, there are people out there. So when Allah says they,
I don't think you're understanding the point here. I'm not saying are there some people who don't believe in Islam and are bad people. We're talking about categories here, because you were saying yes, there do exist people who are good-hearted and honest and don't believe in Islam, but you're also saying they're not going to die a kafir. All the good ones are going to die a Muslim. Is that what you're saying?
No. So remember what I first said. Number one, good and bad, whether a person is good and bad and whatnot. I don't think me and you can ultimately know the truth, whether they were good and bad or
So
not.
to reword that, they can be good people on this earth, but in the eyes of Allah, not good because they're not believers.
Good people on this earth, again, that's by your own subjective judgment.
Good as in people who don't do things that harm other people. Let's use that criteria.
Again, that's if these people exist. If these people exist, that I mean, people who don't ever harm other people in some way or another.
What do you mean if they exist? I mean,
this is.
So are you saying? I'm trying to deal with categories here. Are you saying that people who don't believe in God cannot be people who are good people in the sense that they don't harm others?
Yeah, in the sense that they don't harm others. Yes, 100%. So, for example, let me give you an. I'll use you as an example.
Examples are always like too specific. But go ahead.
Sure, but the only reason why is because we're dealing with, like, you mentioned about categories, right? So I want to use an example so that way you can understand me very clearly. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're someone, you seem very well mannered, you seem respectful, you don't harm people. I mean, you may not harm people in the sense that, you know, you don't murder people, you don't rob people, you don't rape anyone, you know, you're not someone who may lie, etc. Okay. um let's say, you know, you're like this individual, and we come across many people who are like this as well, generally good-hearted people, like my neighbors, etc., nice people. Okay. But at the end of the day, the idea
You're cutting
determine
it.
that, because for example, right, if let's say I got my mother a present. Okay. Do I get my mother a present that I like, or something that she likes? I get something that
Wait,
she
we're
likes, you know.
jumping from one example to another. It makes it very obfuscated. If we're talking about me, right? Let's not talk
Yeah.
about an example of a gift and your mom's standards for what's a good gift. Are you saying that
The reason why
basically?
I'm saying that is it
Yeah,
should be in accordance with what we believe with God. It's not by me and you and our judgment, is
so
basically what
to
I'm saying.
translate that, what you're saying
Yeah.
is you can be a good person by the standards that I set forth, but you're not a good person in the eyes of Allah because you're not a believer, right?
Yeah, and you're not a believer, and obviously, you know, I mentioned before, even if you're someone who, you know, may not have received the message, etc., Allah will take all these factors into account.
Yeah, forget these edge cases. We're talking about someone who's received the correct message and all that and is not convinced, right?
But you
Which
know,
you've
you're saying
acknowledged
edge
they exist.
cases. There may be a lot of people who are in that boat
I'm
on
talking about the
Judgment Day.
main
So,
case
yeah,
because every time I have a discussion with a believer, we always talk about corrupted message, which is Allah's whole job is to give us the message. And on
yeah.
his final attempt, we're still talking about corrupted messages. Like it seems like a cop out. If we're talking about someone who got whatever uncorrupted message you would say is uncorrupted, right? Because there's many sects of Islam, but whatever message you think is correct, or your sect of Islam
I'm
thinks.
just simply. Let me make a simple statement. Anyone that enters hell.
You cut out, but I think I can finish that statement. Anyone who enters hell deserves it, or something like that.
It's because they. I don't. I was like, maybe I'm not saying something
Wait,
that you agree
you cut
with,
out again.
but this is just a matter that we're gonna disagree with them. Sorry,
But
can you hear me?
here's yeah, I can hear you now. You cut out when you were
Okay,
saying
sure.
anyone who enters hell something.
Anyone who enters hell is because they deserved it. Because God is the most knowing, is the most just. So He will know why they entered hell, in which me and you won't know. We can't judge because we are very limited in knowledge and in. Can you hear me, by the way?
I can, but don't you see
Okay,
how
yeah.
self-serving that is? You're basically saying anyone who doesn't believe or isn't convinced deserves it.
Yes, because and that's not by my own rule book or whatever whatever I feel comfortable with.
I'm not trying to
Because yeah,
insinuate that you're a bad person, right? This
yeah,
is not
yeah,
what I'm trying
no,
to
of
say.
course, yeah,
The
yeah.
problem is that you're giving up authority to this supposedly God, right? You're every bad opinion or every harmful opinion you might have, you would say that's not me, that's God, right? But that God is just a figure, a placeholder for all
So
these
I
opinions
wouldn't
and
say that
rules.
is a bad opinion. So I wouldn't say that's a bad opinion.
But
Personally, I
you
wouldn't say
don't
that's a
think it's
bad
bad
opinion.
that, like, say we're talking about any other context, right? If someone is selling shares at a company, some good people accept it and they want to buy, some good people don't. But it turns out whoever didn't buy shares in that company deserves to die. Does that make sense to you? It wouldn't, right? Because you would think that good people can go either way on that matter. But what you're saying boils down to good people can't go either way on this matter. Good people enter Islam.
No, but I don't understand how that would apply with this scenario here.
I mean, Islam is a pitch, right? Like Islam
No,
is a sales
yeah,
pitch, right? Like you're cutting out again. We'll try one more time, and then we'll have to go to the next caller. Okay, I think unfortunately we'll have to move to the next caller. What I wanted to say, and I'm not going to say too much because I don't like to talk when the caller's not here, but what I wanted to say is Islam and every religion is a sales pitch, basically, right? If you're born into it, you don't even need the sales pitch more often than not. You're already a Muslim. But I'm talking about someone who needs the sales pitch, who wants to be convinced. Why should I enter Islam? Why is it the truth? And my opinion is that good people can disagree on that. A good, honest person can have a philosophical disagreement with someone else on the existence of God, on the existence of this specific God, and so on. So it doesn't seem fair to me that disagreement, which more often than not is loaded with other factors that aren't just about your biases that you control, if you can even control your biases, that disagreement doesn't make you a bad person. But anyway, unfortunately, the caller was cutting out, so I'll have to move on to the next one. I'll just read a couple of super chats, and then I'll get to the next caller, which is Ibn Qayyim, which Ibn Qayyim, I believe, was an ex-Muslim, so that should be interesting. So thanks again for the super chats. Stop scamming, man. Very generous of you. They say, for those who know, Hatun Tash was dragged from Hyde Park by police who detained her. Oh, I didn't know that. I don't keep up with her. There's an update. The police apologized and paid £10,000 in damages plus her legal expenses. Not brilliant, but far better than no recompense. I wonder what happened. Last thing I know is that she was stabbed in Hyde Park or Speaker's Corner or whatever it was, and she thankfully survived, but I didn't know she was detained and all that. But thanks for sharing the news. And also, again, stop scamming, man. Thanks for the super chat. They say, many da'is say only a few of those given da'wah convert, and many say that the shahada proceeded to leave? You mean the sahaba proceeded to leave? Are most who don't leave Islam explained to them doomed anyway, or are the da'is increasing the number who go to hell? Let me see if I understand the question correctly. Yeah, okay. So I've spoken about this before. Basically, that's my video saying dawah is evil. Not calling those particular dawah figures evil, but I'm saying the concept itself is evil. If when you give the sales pitch, or the dawah, the invitation to someone, there's a chance they might not accept it. There's a chance they might not agree. Accepted is not the right word, in my opinion. There's a chance they might not be convinced or agree that this is the truth. So by exposing them to Islam, you are basically putting them in danger, when it would make more sense to not tell anybody about Islam. Let Allah judge them by their character or whatever criteria Allah uses, because there's two schools of thought on that. Some Muslims believe that God will then judge the people who never received the message by their actions, sins and good deeds and all that kind of stuff, which seems like a fair criteria. It depends on what sin means and all that. And some think that God would give them that pitch, or someone's going to give them that pitch in the afterlife. And whether or not they were going to believe on earth, that's the same outcome in the afterlife, which seemed predetermined. But whatever it is, yes, what I'm saying, I agree with Stop Scamming Man. Exposing people to dawah is doing them the opposite of a favor. It's putting them in danger by that, outlook of Islam being the truth and so on. Anyway, we'll get to the next caller, Ibn Qayyim. Ibn Qayyim, I hope you're ready, because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, hi there. I'm not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking.
Cool. So I'm basically, I was raised a Muslim, and I left Islam at the age of around 16, and I was like an ardent kind of anti-religious person until very recently, and now I'm of the opinion that really I don't think we should be pushing people away from religion, because the studies seem to suggest that following a religion or being part of a congregation seems to have a positive impact on people, not just mentally, but also in terms of crime rates, etc. So, yeah.
I'd be interested in reading those studies. Not that I don't believe you, but I would want to know, it's not just about the data, but how to interpret it. Like, for example, if you look at certain religious communities in certain areas and see that the crime rate is low there, and look at another irreligious community and think, oh, well, the crime rate is obviously connected, that might not be true. But also, that is a very utilitarian view of religion. So do you believe in religion, and is that related to why you believe?
I wouldn't say I believe in it in an absolute sense. I think the strongest evidence for the existence of God would probably be the contingency argument. But to be honest, I think there's flaws within that. But I think there's an issue with specifically pushing people away from religion. Based on all the meta studies I've seen, almost every single one of them indicate that there is a positive correlation between being or following organized religion compared with people who do not. And those people who do not tend to have are more likely to have mental health problems. They're more likely to commit suicide, commit murder. They're more likely to shoplift. They're more almost every aspect. Those people who do not have a religion tend to kind of suffer, if you know what I mean.
Well, you have sent me the link to the study. I haven't read it yet, so I can't comment on the findings of it. I'd be interested to know many things like how did they account for, like, what's the control group in a study like that? You know, like, how do you know that the religion is the reason that their lives are much better? And
Oh,
how much, like, for example, how much research has been done into the mental health effects caused, by religion or the abuse caused for religious reasons? Are they factored into that kind of study?
so
And how do you collect that data from somewhere like the Middle East?
so these are meta studies. So they take into account a whole range of studies, and they look at the overall results of those studies. So a meta study is far stronger than any individual study. Yeah. So
Well, then I want to pivot back to what you believe about God or about religion. Um, I understand that you believe that people shouldn't move away from it and that it has good benefits on society and individually, which, like I said, I'd need to read that study to comment on it. So I'm going to leave that alone. But what do you believe about God and religion?
personally, I'll be honest with you, I find it very difficult to believe in the existence of God, just because I guess for so many years, basically I've not had a belief in the existence of God, and I believe almost all of the organized religions, the major ones, the Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, are inherently contradictory. The texts are contradictory, so it's very difficult for me to accept any of these specific religions. Whether or not God exists, it might be the case that he does. It might be the case God does not exist. Maybe there was a being that the universe is contingent upon. But yes, but I think maybe us atheists, kind of like agnostics, maybe we need to start our own religion. If the evidence seems to suggest that it's beneficial for people, then maybe we can do something like to kind of replace what we're missing, kind of thing.
Well, that is something I can sort of agree on here because I've said a lot that um, irreligious people, or even if you don't want religion into it, we need a secular sort of godless religion because there is a sense of shared community in religion, but it also comes with a lot of baggage. I'm seeing some commenters saying that this study is 2 decades old or something, which would make me already biased against it because ex-Muslims are just now starting to, they have been for a while, but I mean just now starting to touch the mainstream, and the data isn't even collected
Yeah,
correctly for these kind of cases. So that I assume that would affect the results of such a study because it's not considering the other side, staying in religion. What is that like? But to go back to pivot back to godless religions, I think we do need something like that because it's people like narratives, people like short and catchy phrases, they like slogans, and for the greater good we would need something like that focuses on a few good things, that people should be and should embody and all that. But who's going to go ahead and be the head of that kind of thing?
yeah.
How do you organize it without actually abusing it? Things like that. I mean, I don't know if that's ever going to happen or if it's naturally going to happen someday. Um, but I wonder how. So let me ask you this question. It's related to what you mentioned earlier about religion. So say we just presume that religion keeps people away from bad things or is better for society and individually. Then how do we start to deal with the individual problems that arise because of religion without bringing people out of it?
Um, well, even if there are individual problems that arise within religion, if the overall impact is a positive one, then those issues they would arise, but the overall impact is a positive one, so it wouldn't really matter.
So let's take it on a more personal level. Like, say someone is talking to me and they're telling me I have problems with Christianity's effect on my country and my community, or Islam's effect on my country and community. What would I tell them? Would I tell them that don't worry, overall it's a positive effect, so there's nothing we could do? Because the alternative would be I might get you out of religion.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that might be the case. It's a difficult one. Maybe the studies that have it's not just one. I've got like 6, 7 here, and they're all meta studies, and their focus is on I guess a Western lens. So I'm not specifically talking about the Muslim world as such. I mean, maybe the overall impact, if we take into account the Muslim world, might be a positive one, because a lot Muslims tend to be much more kind of fundamentalist in their belief. So I mean, it could be the case that in the Muslim world, that bringing people away from Islam could have an overall net positive impact. Whereas I think these studies are more focused on the West, and they just seem to indicate that people who are more practicing in terms of, for example, whatever religion they believe in, on average, tend to have an overall positive impact on them. So yeah, I mean, it might be the case. You might be 100% right. Whereas in the Muslim world, it could be completely different. But yeah,
Again, I would need to read into that study, because I have questions like, for example, could the correlation just be that the religious communities are already more peaceful, and that's why they happen to be more cohesive, or that's why the church plays a bigger role and people care more about pleasing, their community than in non-religious communities? That there's a lot of ways that this data can be analyzed. I'm not comfortable making that distinction, that perhaps in the Middle East religion is better dissolved and perhaps in the West it's not. But how does any of that affect what you believe about religion? Like for yourself, your religious beliefs, let's say that.
I'll be honest, I'm a bit too far gone. Probably in the same position as a lot of people who are watching the show. But sometimes I ask myself, if I was still a Muslim, would I be less likely to commit a crime, or would I be nicer to the people, etc.? And for me personally, I think I was a worse person when I was a Muslim than as a non-Muslim, in the sense that I was more arrogant, etc. When I was a Muslim. But I would say that confidence and the arrogance and the belief in God made me far less stressful about other aspects of my life. And that stress, I think, can lead to negative impacts with, say, for example, your health, etc. So yeah, so I would say in certain ways that was better. In other ways, I'm much more questioning about. I question myself much more on some of my actions, etc., which could lead to further stress and whatnot. Yeah, which is not good.
So do you think that for the greater good, we shouldn't bring people's attention to flaws in their religion because it'll bring them out of it?
That's what the studies seem to suggest. Yeah, that if we do bring many of these people out, and especially in terms of the psychological impact it can have on people, it might not be a good thing, especially in the West. Yeah,
So how would you deal with problems that people have with religion? Do you think that the best approach is just to ignore them because it's for the greater good to keep religion?
if that's the case, and the studies indicate it is, but obviously I might be wrong on that. I'm not saying it's 100% correct. Maybe my interpretation of the studies is incorrect. But if that is the case, then we shouldn't. Then I think it's better for people to believe in a lie, and then the overall impact of that to have a much greater positive impact on society than to bring people out of the lie, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I might see it this way if I actually somehow believed that that kind of study was true. But
Yeah.
Again, given that I haven't looked at it, and given that it's not indicative of how things or data are in other parts of the world than where it was conducted, I would have to concede that I don't have a position on that. I still think that my goal is not to get people out of religion. It's always to point out the things that I've had issues with in religion, and not just me, people that I've noticed around me as well, and people all over the world. And that usually tends to bring people out of faith eventually, or it changes the way that they believe. And the goal is not to get them to be irreligious, but the goal is to get them to think about the parts that don't make sense or that might be harmful to others or themselves. So if whatever the outcome is, the goal is to reduce that harm. So
Yeah.
that's my methodology here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And by the way, I think you're one of the best in terms of people within the ex-Muslim community discussing these topics. And I think you should take the next step and start debating people on like platforms like Modern Day Debates. And honestly, it'll take whatever you're doing here to a whole nother level. And the audience you'll get from that. I mean, that's how, for example, Daniel Haqiqatjou built his audience, was by debating ex-Muslims. And I think, because I think you clearly have the ability to do that. So I think 100% you should do it, mate, honestly.
Well, I appreciate that. And I have been thinking about it despite not liking the style of debates that is present on such platforms. But I feel like, and I'm also worried about the kind of audience that would bring, that kind of attention would bring to my channel, like all the people in the comments who would ruin this space for everyone else. But someday I'll be venturing into that kind of conversation. If anyone has any suggestions on specific people I can have a conversation with, either on that, platform or somewhere else, I'm happy to take suggestions. But yeah, anyway, I appreciate the encouragement. Thank you.
Cool. No worries. No, thank you for having this chat with me, and I'll let you move on to the next caller. And what I'll do is, in the private chat, I'll just put all the links to the studies, and then obviously you can take your time and look through them if you like.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
All right.
All right.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. I'll read a couple of chats and then I'll get to the next caller. We've got 3 more in queue, and the queue is closed for today because 3 more should be plenty to talk to. So first of all, thank you, Food and Religion. I really appreciate the super chat. It says, keep doing what you're doing, buddy. The channel's awesome and you're a diamond in the rough. I really appreciate it. And stop scamming, man. Once again, thank you. They say when it comes to the most and least happy countries, the less religious perform very disproportionately well and Islamic ones terribly. Often 1 or 2 will make it within the 20 happiest on the index. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. There's a lot more factors involved than people realize. And I'm not saying that's what the commenter is saying, but a lot of people are tempted to point out such an index and say, well, that's obviously because, religion makes things worse. It's not that simple. A lot of these countries that are doing very well in happiness indexes, you got to think about how rich are they? How dense are their populations? How did they get to be that rich and sparse in density? All these factors are involved. A lot of these countries, unfortunately, are the most recent beneficiaries of colonization in one form or another. Like the UK is one example. I'm not saying that other countries around the world didn't do it, but maybe in history, as time passed, other countries have done it in the past, but they've squandered that conquering power, or they have not allocated the resources the same way. And now we're looking at many countries that are doing exceptionally well because they're the most recent beneficiaries, of colonization. So that's just one factor. Not to say that every happy atheist country is a product of colonization, but that is definitely something to think about. And also there's the correlation the other way around. The people, when they're not happy, when they're desperate, when they're poor, they're more likely to turn to God because they're more desperate for an answer. Not to say that religious people or rich people cannot be religious, but which makes more sense? If things are going okay, you've got healthcare, your life is decently happy, you've got options. Do you really feel like you got to beg God for anything versus someone who has to worry about how they're going to feed their kids and there's no healthcare in their country and it's all gone to hell? They're desperate. They really want to ask God for help. That's one factor also to consider. So all that's to say, it's not always that simple, and I don't know if I don't think the commenter was insinuating that it is, but I wanted to let the people watching know, if I'm showing such a comment, I want to give my thoughts on it. It's not as simple as just religion makes people unhappy. But yeah. Okay, I'll get to the next caller. Stop Scamming Man. Thanks again for the super chat. They say, would you be interested in having a discussion on YouTube with an academic in Islamic studies or similar, like Apostate Prophet did with Robert Hoyland? I would be. It's just that, to be completely frank with you, it's so hard to stay on top of everything. I really appreciate everyone who supports me here. Like, you've given me time to try to stay on top of everything, but it's still hard. Like, I'm doing animated videos, I'm doing live streams, and doing commentary videos, and I'm speaking to people behind the scenes. So I haven't had time to arrange that kind of conversation, but hopefully someday I will. But in the more recent future, I think I'm going to have more conversations with some of the da'wah people in the YouTube space, if I can manage to do that. Because I think that a lot of what they say, if they just engage in a conversation instead of fighting someone, we might get somewhere with what they're saying. Okay, so getting to the next caller. Thanks for waiting for this long. Ryan, I hope you're ready, because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Ryan, how's it going? Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I'm a bit suspicious, Ryan. Are you there? Okay.
Sorry, my headphones is kind of messed up. One more time,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Say something again.
Can you hear me?
Still can't hear you, Ryan.
Okay. Not sure how to make this answer.
Still can't hear you, unfortunately.
Okay, now I just switched. Okay, it's good?
Yep, we're good. We're good.
Alrighty.
We're back.
How are you? I've been
I'm doing
listening
all
to you
right.
the past year, had midlife crisis. My uncle gave me your channel. He's an atheist. All my uncles are atheist. And I'm here. Nice to meet you.
Well, nice to meet you as well. I'm sorry to hear about your crises, and I can't help but be a little bit amused by how it happened the other way around. That your uncles are the atheists, and they're the ones who gave you my channel. That's interesting. But again, I'm sorry that you're struggling with,
It's okay.
existentialism, I'm assuming.
It's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So essentially, I don't like the way the past two callers were speaking to you. I don't consider them Muslim.
Why do you say that?
Well, because if we're really following scripture, this is how I am. I go either all the way or I don't go all the way. If I'm going to study, if I'm going to be a believer, I'm going to follow every part of scripture, the Old Testament, the Gospel, the Quran. And so essentially in Matthew 7:6, Jesus teaches us that we do not give dogs what is sacred, and do not throw your pearls to pigs, because if we do, they may trample us under their feet and then tear us to pieces. In Micah
Well,
2
wait
to
a second.
3,
Are you a Christian?
in Micah 2:3, we have to spread dung upon your
Wait,
faces.
are you a Christian?
No, I'm a Muslim,
Okay.
but I follow scripture and the gospel and the Old Testament, but the Quran is the final authority. So what I'm trying to say is, you and my uncles, you guys are dogs. We can dialogue, just like Prophet Muhammad dialogued with pagans. But essentially, what you guys are dogs. You guys are of the devil, deaf, dumb, and blind, just like the Quran said in chapter 2, verse 18. And you guys are
Wait,
infused.
I just want to pause you for a second. I'm not heavily offended or anything, but I just want to make sure that you're not a troll. What do
No.
you think you're going to gain from this conversation, if that's what you think of me?
Well, because I'm pretty good at convincing, and I want to get you out of the hold of the devil.
Okay, so here's a tip for you as someone who, has a lot of conversations. You're never going to convince someone by first telling them, like, even if that's what you think, by first telling them that they're like dogs and, feces on their face and all that kind of stuff. It's not a good strategy. Like,
That's
I
what
don't
our
think.
script says, though.
So, okay, that's what your scripture says. Don't you see that that's a bad strategy for your scripture to follow or your God to follow?
Not really, because it teaches us how to deal with you guys.
But is it working though? If human psychology is it's very common that if you insult someone, right, and call them names, they're probably not going to be convinced by what you're saying. So
Look at the world's population, how 97% is following the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
right, and most of those people are born into it, right? And I don't want to put words in people's mouth as to why they believe, so that's why I bring them here. But a lot of those people are born into it. I have a feeling that you're messing with me, or you're not actually here to tell me about why you believe. So
No, I want to ask you this, and be honest with me, okay? God is a witness. Are you gay? Because what we're seeing in its Pride Month is that a lot of people are abandoning God just because they want to practice what their biological impulses tell them to practice, which is to have sex with other men, in your case, or lesbianism. And we're seeing spiritual warfare these days, how the devil has a strong hold on everybody. And essentially God is not losing, but the devil is prospering right now. And you're one of the soldiers. And so I just want you to admit, do you have any ulterior motives?
well, I'm not interested in you if that's what you're asking. But it's
Why can't you just?
I'm still trying to figure out if you're actually sincere in what you're talking about, or you're just here to troll.
I'm not here to troll. I'm sincere. I'm just. Why are you thinking I'm practicing more of Islam and Judaism or Christianity than anybody else is that is trying to appease to dogs, just like Jesus said, or just like you saw how Prophet Muhammad treated the pagans. We have to be the way our prophets showed us how to be.
Yeah, you're definitely trolling, because most Muslims, at least they sugarcoat it a little bit. They say that
Why should
Muhammad. Yeah, I have a feeling that
why
you're.
sugarcoat? If we're gonna practice, we go all the way.
I'm gonna pull a reverse Uno card on you. How many rak'ahs in wudu?
Why? So why can't we practice what we preach?
Wait, how many rak'ahs in wudu?
Why can't? So listen, see how you're laughing? The devil is confused right now.
No, I think you're confused. I can't believe I'm saying this unironically. How many rak'ahs are in wudu?
There is no rakats in wudu. Listen, you're an Arab. You need to follow your ancestors. Be Muslim. Do not succumb to the West's agenda, especially the devil. You were under spiritual warfare. You're laughing because the demon is kind of upset right now.
Yeah, the demon is tickling my butthole right now. Yeah, okay. This was fun. Yeah, sorry guys. I'm still, jury's still out whether he's trolling or not, but it was a fun little breather, I suppose. Okay. All right. And I've answered the question before, by the way. So many people ask me that for some reason, and they all happen to be Muslim. Are you gay? Are you gay? Well, since it's, LGBT month or Pride month or whatever, I will let you know that I already made a video about this where I said, here's practically what it boils down to. If I say, no, I'm not, whether I am or not, I'm basically telling the religious people to get off my back, go harass another gay ex-Muslim or gay person. That's not me. But if I say, yes, I am, just to take one for the team, that may not be true, but also I'm basically inviting their harassment and saying, like, I'm your target right here. I think that I'll take whatever harassment they give me if they think I'm gay. If I'm actually gay, it doesn't really matter, because on principle, none of what I say has to do with my sexual preferences. I've never told you guys about my kinks and interests. We're not on a date. We're not on a third date or anything. So, or later, I don't know. Well, why am I telling you when I share my kinks and preferences? Never mind. We're getting a little bit off topic here, I think. But yeah, it's absolutely okay to be gay. I just like to keep it vague just because I want to make the point. What I'm here, like, this channel is not about me. It's not about a cult of personality. It's not about who Aladdin is and let's be like Aladdin or let's not be like Aladdin. It's not really relevant to the topic. And if you start pestering other people that way, what if someone says they are gay, then what? Like, I think it should be a non-issue for people because it really is a non-issue. Mo Jake, thanks for the super chat. They say Ryan is such a joker. Flawless execution, man. And as Asad Kamal says, if you answer the question, it's basically validating a question that has nothing to do with which religion is true, or which non-religion or any of that. But yeah, no, please do not worship Aladdin or anything like that. So I'm taking the next caller. Next caller is ALK. I hope you're ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. How you doing, Aladdin?
Doing all right. What is up with you? What's going on?
Not much. I called not too long ago. I assume you probably remember me.
You sound very familiar.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I had called last time and we were talking about a couple of different things. I guess I felt like it wasn't necessarily productive, but I wanted to call back and maybe try to get some productive conversation or something that people could maybe benefit from. As you recall, I'm Muslim. I'm on the pro-Muslim side of this. Obviously, I'm a Muslim. I've been interested.
Wait, I'm not on the not pro-Muslim side. It's not about that. It's just about what do you believe, right, and why.
Oh, as far as that, I had told you last time. I don't necessarily believe in any religion being right versus wrong. I have a kind of universal understanding of religion, and I think Islam kind of falls in line with that, at least the way I understand it. So as far as my belief, there's that. But last time we were speaking about a couple of topics. I wanted to maybe kind of go into one of those topics regarding the Prophet and his marriage to Aisha. I just wanted to, I guess, maybe make a point regarding that to people out there. I would say mostly for people who are.
Wait, we gotta take a little bit of a poll because most people, I feel like, are tired of that topic. So let's ask people who are watching right now: do you want to hear us discuss Muhammad's marriage to a young child?
Because I think I could provide something new to the discussion here. That I haven't seen discussed before.
We'll give it a minute. Let's see what people in the comments say. And just for everyone to know, I was already like, Muhammad Hijab recently made a tweet about the topic or as a response to something else. And I made a video about it and I'm editing it, so it should be published by tomorrow. But most people are saying no, they don't want to hear about it. Because honestly, it's a little tiring.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So we want to stick to. Why do you believe that Islam aligns to what you think is right or makes more sense?
Well, I just want to say one thing. I won't get into it, but I only want to make the point that there are objective ways to look at these things, and there is data and science out there that professionals actually use to diagnose these things, and people should try to consider that because it's a good way to approach things in life.
To diagnose what? Sorry.
Things like victims of sexual abuse and things of these nature. There are ways that we could look at people's lives and understand, is this someone that aligns with the scientific data? And so I just wanted to throw that out there, but that's fine. Like, we don't have to necessarily get into it, but, because I feel like it's a ignorant talking point out there and I oppose it. So
I'm going to let it slide just because we said we're not going to talk about the topic, but it's not me agreeing with what you said, but let's move on. Yeah.
Well, that was my main thing to speak about. I guess, I don't know if there's anything you want to ask me or something, I guess.
To be honest, I don't remember the specifics of what we spoke about before, but so let me ask you a new question. Do you believe that Islam is true?
I believe Islam is true, correct? Yes.
So you believe that God actually revealed this religion to Muhammad, right?
Yes, I believe. Yeah, I believe that this is a connection to God.
So what makes you believe that these are facts?
What are facts? Oh, that this is
that God revealed it to Muhammad, in a cave
well,
through Jibril.
What leads me to believe that is, well, the first step is I believe the existence of God is simply a fact. I spoke about this last time I was here, but I guess you're not necessarily concerned with theism versus atheism. You're more concerned with the religious aspect of it.
Sure.
But using that as my starting point, like that's kind of the first step in this is, so I understand God to be a reality of the world around us. And I guess from there, I feel like there's got to be some way that we can try to understand or connect with that reality. I feel like there's an interaction between this life and you could say that world or that dimension, whatever it may be. And
that's a feeling that you have, that there's a connection between this and the unseen dimension.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So understanding this reality, something does exist outside of space and time. I feel like it's not
that's a feeling that you have, right?
No, that's just a fact. Like that's just if the existence cannot be explained by remaining bound by space and time or staying within space and time, you have to step outside of it. And if we understand God as being spaceless and timeless, as described in vast majority of religions.
Wait, no, we can't skip to how it's described. We're talking about the foundation here, right? So you're saying that I'll concede with you because like I said, I don't really argue theism. Let's say something exists that created us, right? You're saying that you feel that there is a connection between us and that thing, and that's a fact. Is that a feeling or a fact?
No. That there's a connection. No, that's a feeling. That's not a fact. That there is something, that's a fact, but that we have a connection with it. Yeah, I can't say that's a fact. I would say that's more of a. I feel like that's what must be the case, but I can't say that's a fact.
Why do you have that feeling?
Because everything's connected. Like everything is connected. I'm connected to the furthest galaxies. So it's a kind of understanding of life. Everything is connected. So why would I assume? So I guess that I kind of apply that to that other dimension. Like if everything know and
everything is connected is not a fact. That's a feeling.
No. I mean, like the same elements that you could find on stars billions of miles away, you find these elements on us. Like everything is connected, probably from the Big Bang. I mean, I don't know science the best, but maybe at the Big Bang, everything was like one spot. So we were actually literally connected. I don't know, but.
So what you're saying is we're made of the same atoms. We're made of the same material, right? Not exactly the same, but
yeah.
I mean, physically, we may be made of elements, or there are elements on certain stars that don't exist in us, but you're saying that they're all the same, on the same plane of reality, therefore we're connected?
Yeah, like we're all connected to say that we were all at once, like we've all interacted with each other at some point or another. I guess you could say.
Also not necessarily true. I mean, that's assuming that the Big Bang is true, then all the atoms were close together, is what you're saying?
Yeah. So it's like, it's like we're here on this earth and something looks like it's 1 billion miles away. But the reality is like, actually that is something that if you trace my energy back, right, obviously you could go back to my parents and like through a sperm cell and an egg and go back. And then even before that, who knows what came. And we all came from the same, and the same with the stars all the way out there. Like we all came from the same, essentially we came from the same energy.
I don't know if that's, so let me give you an analogy that sounds like what you're saying.
Sure.
All the water atoms in the ocean are H2O, right? They're all the same plane of existence. They're all H2O. Therefore, there must be a connection between all of them, and therefore that must mean that there's a whale in there that controls all the water.
No,
that doesn't follow.
I didn't really follow that either.
That's kind of similar to what you're saying, that we're all connected to all the stars, and all the matter in the universe used to be in one spot, or it's all made of the same sort of, structures. Therefore, we must be connected to God.
Let me try to reword that. So you asked me, why do I have the feeling that which is outside of space and time interacts with this world? Correct? Essentially, you're saying, like, why do I feel that these things must interact with each other? And the reason I think that is because when I look at the world around me, even though everything looks separate, everything actually does interact with one another. Like if the sun gets affected here, God knows how small of an effect it has on something, but it's just like we are a collection of cells, and we all interact with each other. So if there is something that exists in that dimension, I guess it wouldn't make sense that there's no interaction with that and this. I guess I don't know. Never really.
There's a lot of ifs in that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but yeah, I can't say it's a fact that whatever exists outside of that is interacting with us, or or whatever.
So I don't know, is that a solid foundation to then find Islam based on that?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I use that type of thinking every single day in my life. Like that's so all my observations tell me something, so I just accept it as a fact. So all my observations tell me there's a sun in the sky, so I just accept it as a fact. Now the reality is maybe there's not. I don't know, but what's the point? I'm just gonna accept it as a fact. So in that sense, like, yeah, that's why I feel very strongly about it. Like every understanding that I have.
Do you think the way that you arrived at these conclusions can be written down in a way that someone else can understand, that you can communicate it to someone else?
I wonder. These are really weird thoughts I have. Like a lot of let me give you another kind of strange thought that I have. It's about the idea of life and consciousness. And, the fact is we're all made up of separate living cells. However, when combined, it creates this single living entity. But each cell is still a separate cell with a separate consciousness. I mean, they act and react, and you have immune cells that remember things, and they go to war against pathogens. So it's really a strange thing to be like, where does that separate life, where does that end and mine begins? It's like, it's a strange thing. Like life is just a strange thing. I don't know exactly how to tie that into this, but I don't know if that somewhat illustrates how I see things,
A little bit, but I can't say that I quite understand where you're coming from, but I appreciate you trying to explain it anyway. Perhaps if I have another live stream where I do tackle that topic that I'm tired of talking about, then you might want to join to talk about that. But
I had a lot of stuff to share with people, but I mean, if people don't want to hear it, that's fine. But yeah, I kind of called in with hoping to get a particular point across, but yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really have much else.
That's all right. But yeah, thanks for calling in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Sure, no problem.
Bye-bye. All right, I'm taking the next caller. We've got two more callers. Oh, and Critical Thinker is back. Let me see if I can add Masood if he is ready. Well, I hope you are ready, because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Aladdin. It's going well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's morning time now. My kids are getting ready. I have to rush them out to school. So I've got only small little window to talk. I would definitely feel like I should catch up with you, like a one-on-one session if you would like, because I've got a background researching Islam for the last 10 years. I've been writing 3 books. They're on Amazon, and currently I'm translating the Holy Quran into modern English. So I've been interacting with atheists in Australia for the past 10 years. I've got a lot to talk to you, and also I'm very interested to find out the reasons of your moving away from religion and faith, not just Islam, but I would also be interested to know why haven't you explored other religions, for example, Christianity. So I would be keen
I mean,
to
are you
figure out.
able to join a live stream next week? I'm live streaming every Wednesday going forward.
I was actually waiting for you because on your banner you had 2 different times. So I was waiting Sunday night. Unfortunately, your times off for me at the extremes. I have to either wait midnight, like 12 o'clock midnight, or I have to like in this morning when I'm really busy with my kids. So we have to find a suitable time if you don't mind. I mean, the times that you give me on your banner are very extreme.
Well,
for me.
starting next week, I'm going to be doing Wednesdays a bunch of different times to try to cater different time zones. So
Can we agree mutually? Can we agree for a time?
it's hard for me to commit to that right now. But here's the thing:
Okay.
if you check on Tuesday on my channel, you'll find the stream scheduled for Wednesday. I'll schedule it from even before then. So I'll try to have it at different times, and hopefully we'll get to talk then.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, the other day I was waiting for you, this like Sunday, your Sunday, but then I realized maybe you're not making the stream today or something like that.
Yeah, I usually announce them in advance, and if you go to my homepage, like you'll see that the stream's already scheduled. So going
Yeah,
forward,
this
I'm going
time
to
I
change
caught
the
it.
banner, but going forward is going to be Wednesdays. So hopefully we'll
Yeah,
catch up on one of those Wednesdays.
right. So I would definitely be interested to figure out or
Sure.
understand the reasons for your abandoning faith altogether, not just Islam, but altogether faith.
I mean, I
And
can give you a simple reason right now. It's just
yeah,
that
sure.
it's not a reliable way of finding out the truth.
Like what? Faith?
The faith and also the prophet game, and a man told us this and that. It's not a reliable way of finding the truth. But I'm interested in knowing, why you believe that it is the truth and how you
Yeah,
arrived at that.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
If you have time, just have a look at my profile on Amazon and have a look at my books that I've written.
Well, people are curious.
I'm-
Can you give us one of the names of the books? Because people in the chat are curious.
yeah, sure. I will give you a link here if you can.
Or yeah, just tell us the name and we'll write it down.
Can I show the screen if you don't mind?
I would have to. I'll have to put the names up. So yeah, once we hang up, I'll put the names up. All right.
So
Well,
you don't want me to present it like a screen share or something like that?
yeah, no, that's okay.
Okay.
I'll put it up.
Okay,
All right.
and I've got a YouTube channel also. It's called Allah's
Well,
Narrative.
we haven't even spoken yet, so I can't
Yeah,
let
okay,
you,
that's fine. Not a
promote
problem.
yourself.
Not a problem.
All right.
But I'll give you the links anyway. I'll give you the links anyway in this chat here, in the private chat.
Sure.
So
All
for
right.
your reference, okay. But yeah, I would I'm super interested to catch up with you, and not to really harass you or anything like that. I mean, it's God's given free choice of people to believe, to disbelieve, or whatever. I mean, it's God has given this choice to people. They can do whatever they want in this life, right? So I respect that, whatever choice people make. I've got no issues with your personal choices, but objectively, if you want to challenge Muslims or challenge faith and religion in general, or stuff like that, then yeah, of course I'm in the scene. So this is something that I do. I face people with challenges. Then
Well, I hope that next time you'll be able to join the call. So
yeah,
hopefully next
okay.
Wednesday. Yeah.
I mean, I would appreciate if something in a convenient time works out for me and for me
I'll
and you.
do my
Because
best. Yeah.
yeah, okay, all right,
Yeah. Take
Aladdin.
care.
Thank you. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.
All right. I'll get to the next caller. Yeah, I'm going to change that on my banner sometime. So from now on, expect live streams on Wednesdays. So check on Tuesday, should be posted, or like on my homepage, it'll show upcoming live streams. Asad says, I still wishing Allah had just made a how-to YouTube channel. Me too, my brother, me too. But also, it's not good competition. No, actually, I'd rather him not start a YouTube channel. Yeah, I'm a little annoyed that the guy can, like, yeah, I know he was short on time, but we didn't really talk about anything. So if you want to find his books, you just look him up on Amazon. Okay, I'll take the next caller, Critical Thinker. I can add you on for a little bit before I get to Brutus. So we'll return to Critical Thinker in 3, 2, 1. Hey.
Thank you, Aladdin. I'm so sorry, brother. I really apologize. I was in the car, I lost connection. Thank you so much. How much time do you have roughly? Because the thing is, I really want our conversation was going very well, by the way, and thank you for that. I just want to do justice for the conversation, you know. So do you have a time where you was planning to end the stream, or
say we've got 15 more minutes or so?
50, yeah?
No, 15, okay. 15 or 15. Like call it 20 minutes before I get to the next caller. Because yeah.
Okay, 20 minutes. Okay, yeah. So we'll try to unpack everything. Okay, so I think the main difference with the last one, I think, which it's just a matter of agreeing to disagree, because I don't think we can come to a conclusion where we both will agree. But I think just my simple statement is, anyone that goes to hell simply will be there because they deserved it. Okay, and your case is that no, that, you know, obviously, number one, you don't believe in hell, but you don't believe, obviously, just because you disbelieve, you know, if it's a good person doesn't mean they're deserving of to go to hell. Is that correct?
But also, like, we can agree to disagree, but my contention was also not with our conclusions, but with how some of what you said contradicts itself. So let me clarify. So
sure.
That's why I want to spell it out, just to be clear. So do you believe that an honest, well-meaning person who, you know, does good things in life and does more good things than bad things, belief aside, you know, take belief out of the equation, a good person, let's call it that, who's open-minded and honest, do you believe that if they're given the correct message, whatever that is, they can honestly not be convinced? Is that possible?
I don't think it is possible for, like you said, an honest, sincere person who is genuine to not be convinced that Islam is the truth.
See, okay, that's it. Kind of contradicts what earlier you had kind of said, that maybe it's possible, but you said, but they wouldn't die on that. They might become Muslim before they die. Right.
So how does that contradict then? If I said that earlier, that maybe they wouldn't die if that.
Before the clarification, I had assumed that you said, no, someone can be honest and not believe, but you see how this is a categorical problem.
Yeah. Well, like, while they're living, I'm saying, for example, before reverts, you know, reverts, like, I'm sure you've seen some revert videos. They say, back in the day, I used to hate Islam. I used to disbelieve, So at that time, they did believe, but then they found their way. So that's all I was saying. I was saying it's definitely possible for someone who disbelieves, even for someone who hates Islam, but they can still find their way, back to what we say is the truth. Yeah.
Religion aside, don't you agree that in philosophy or politics or economics or whatever it may be, two well-meaning honest people can have different conclusions?
With regards to
philosophy or politics or economics, say it's about taxes, right?
But the thing is, I wouldn't hold it to the same level as, for example, religion. So, for example,
that's what I mean. So it's possible in every other domain that a good, honest person can disagree with you and still be a good, honest person, except when it comes to religion, it means that they're a bad person.
Because the other conversations which is taking place between two individuals with regards to a topic which isn't dependent upon their salvation, whereas this topic in particular is dependent upon the salvation.
That's kind of circular. You're saying because it's dependent on their salvation, therefore, no, like, take salvation out of it. We're just talking about being convinced, right?
Because people can be honest in other areas and be good people in other areas, but in other areas they may fault and they may be bad, Right,
but what I'm saying is, in every domain except for religion, you agree that people can arrive at different conclusions despite both of them being honest and good people.
Yeah, no doubt. People can be honest, and it's not a contradiction. Rather, I'll call it a contradistinction, because I'm distincting between the two. Because both the situations and the circumstances, they are not on the exact same level. They both are under a different context. One is not dependent on their salvation, one isn't. So I wouldn't call it a contradiction. I'll call it a contradistinction. I'm distinguishing between the two, and I'm saying how one principle cannot be applied to the other, and it cannot be generalized.
You just made up reasons why one cannot apply to the other. You just said basically because salvation Like it's circular. You're using salvation, which is a conclusion of this belief. We're taking that part out of it. We're just talking about, can an honest person disagree with you?
Yeah, so an honest person, no doubt, can disagree with you on a matter. No doubt. For example, an honest person can disagree with you, let's say, about football, let me just say. Or, like you said, about politics.
Or
Even if something,
taxes,
let's
or
say, is
whatever
clear
it
cut.
is. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But why is it only that when it's about Islam, if they disagree, it must be because they're bad people or they're dishonest and so on?
Yeah. So the reason why is because for someone who doesn't believe in Islam, and even if they, try their, best to, they're researching, etc. But inside, we said God will account for that. For me, as a human being, it's not possible for me to give an explanation that will satisfy you, because in order for me to do that, I would have to be all-knowing. And I would have to be knowing what that person is, his mindset. I cannot offer an explanation. This is something that we believe God will, who is the most just, we leave that with him. He's the one who deals with these matters accordingly. If you're expecting for me to provide an explanation and say this person, because, for example, I'd have to know this person, number one. So it's difficult for me to just
you
say.
don't have to know a person. We're talking about categories here, because I know you're trying to shy away from categories, but at the same time, you are implicitly making a categorical remark here. When you're
When you say
saying
shying
that,
away from categories, like what do you mean exactly? Maybe I'm just.
I mean,
not
we're always looking at
understanding each other
specific
here.
examples. Like, we're always saying, I don't know what's in that person's heart. Maybe they're a bad person behind the scenes. No, we're talking about categories, right? If someone is honest and sincere, you're saying they have to accept, like a good, honest person, sincere, open-hearted, all these good qualities, has to accept that Islam is the truth when it is presented to him, right? Or her. That's what you're saying. So the opposite must be true. If they don't accept Islam, then the conclusion is they must be dishonest people, or there must be something wrong here.
Minus the edge cases, yes, correct. Yes, that's correct.
But and then when I ask you, so how come you don't have this mentality about any other thing, any other topic, right? Like politics, whatever it is, you can see that people can disagree and be honest, except when it comes to Islam. And you say it's because I would have to have ilm al-ghaib, I would have to have knowledge of the unknown to answer that, or that's a contradiction that only God can answer. Like, you don't see that this is a problem when you've created a special case for it, and the answer for that special case is God knows. So you have to have faith for the special case to apply. Did the connection cut out? I think we might have lost the caller again. Oh, make sure the camera's not on.
Can you hear me, Aladdin?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, cool. So I was saying, I totally understand what you're saying. You're basically saying, how come you're not applying the same principle, basically, right? You're saying so when it comes to religion and a person is honest, etc., you're saying that you believe they will accept Islam, Allah will guide them, right? But when you're saying that with other matters, you're saying that someone can be honest but still reach two different conclusions. I just want to make sure I'm not misrepresenting you, but that's what you're arguing, right?
I think that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think what you described is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is this. With this person who is, let's say he's honest, because then again, I cannot say for certain whether they are honest or not. Do you understand? This is what
we're
I'm
talking
trying to
about
get at.
Categories, right? We're talking about categories.
But you're obviously saying if that person is honest about a different matter, put aside religion, about a different matter, but they still reach different conclusions, right? I'll say this matter, let's say they reach different conclusions, regardless, they're not going to be punished whether they reach a different conclusion or not. But with something like religion, you understand, which is dependent upon salvation, right? This is where honesty and sincerity is really looked at and is valued heavily. So with other matters, politics,
I think
philosophy, these kind of things, you're saying if a person is very, very honest, but they reach different conclusions, yeah, this isn't something I say you can link with religion. I don't think you can make that link. I guess
you created a different category for religion, different from every other thing in the world. Like, you acknowledge that good people can disagree about things, right? You acknowledge that. But then you say, but religion is a different category. It's on a plane of existence that is very different because it has to do with your torture and salvation. It's circular. You're saying the only reason religion gets this special category is because of the consequences, but the concept itself hasn't changed, that people can disagree about things honestly.
No, the reason why is because when it comes with religion, if people disagree with religion, let's say it's because of their own desires, to them they may think they're being honest, but to someone else they could be very dishonest.
But so let's
that's what I'm
rephrase
saying.
what you said. No, let's rephrase what you said, because we got to be careful here. What you're saying is people might be deluded and not even realize that they're being dishonest internally.
No, I wouldn't say like that, where they're completely deluded, whatnot. No, because
It's not about the harshness of the word. It's actually the reality of what you're describing, that basically the categories, you're eliminating every case. You're saying the person might think they're honest, but they're actually internally dishonest, but they don't know it. So they're deluded.
I wouldn't say it like in that. I know what you mean in that that's like the reality, but I wouldn't say it in that way, because like if there's delusional, if they're deluded and they're intentionally being deluded, right, then I would say that's where dishonesty is. But if it's deluded, then it almost comes across as if like it wasn't their fault. I'm saying if it's their fault and they are to blame, so that's the reason why hellfire, it makes sense for them to be the ultimate punishment.
But it's still circular. You're saying that people, like, how does someone intentionally be delusional? How do you intentionally delude yourself? That's not how delusion works.
So for example, people will justify things, right? So people will justify, I don't know, let's say sex before marriage, or let's say something else that is haram, etc. And there may be people who, to them, they will say, look, I honestly disagree. And by the way, these are people who, let's say, they're respectful people. They don't.
Wait, don't you see how black and white that is? You're saying basically everything outside of your faith, right? If people are deluded to think that way, and I'm not trying to say that you're saying harsh words. I'm trying to actually distill it into what it means, right?
I appreciate that.
Basically, that people who have different beliefs than you are either bad or doing it for bad, like intentionally doing these things, knowing that they're bad, or they're deluded. But don't you see how that's a very black and white way of seeing the world?
Well, I wouldn't. Whether is black and white, I guess it's a matter of, subjective. Maybe to you, subjective. To me, I'd say sometimes black and white is necessary. Whether something is the truth or whether something is the falsehood, And so sometimes black and white. Not everything can be, I don't know, rainbow. Some things need to be black and white. You need to have certain rules, which is clear.
It's not about whether some things are. It's about the convenience. Like, don't you see that it's a problem that everything outside of your belief system is bad, everything inside is good, and it's unquestionable because God said so. That doesn't pose to you any problems in seeing how. It also, the problem is someone like on the Christian side or whatever other religion, they would see it exactly the same way. They're trapped in a black and white thinking. But your God expects them to to do the black thing. Like your God, basically what Allah is asking them to do is the equivalent of you doing the things that Islam says don't do to go find the actual religion. Like, don't you see how that's a big barrier? Don't you see how the other side sees it the same way? Like, you're telling me that, things that there are many things that are haram, right? Allah says there are things that are halal, there are things that are haram.
Correct.
For you,
and would you say that's black and white, by the way?
No, that's not really important at the moment. Say like the actual religion.
But would you though? Would you say that's black and white? The fact that there's stuff that's halal and that's stuff that's haram.
I don't know if that's really. I don't know how to answer that question, because
that's kind of what I'm saying to you. So with some of the questions as to whether it's black and white, this and that, I mean, I can answer it. I can actually answer it, but it's not going to be in a way that's pleasing to you or in a way that you would accept. I know you're not going to accept
I want you to think about this example right here. Say it's not Islam that is the truth. Say it's a religion called X, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
Say that religion is the truth. Now you think that everything haram, right? So you think that doing anything that religion X says is haram, right? Because Allah said,
have legitimate reasons to believe in it in the first place.
No, just hear me out. Just hear me out. You're a Muslim, right?
Sure.
You think that anything that religion X says is haram, right? Because you are a Muslim. But in this exercise, religion X is actually the truth. You are trapped in Islam, in falsehood, in this exercise, right? You are trapped in your religion because you can't step outside of it because it's haram. Now let's reverse the example. Islam is the truth, and someone is in religion X, everything outside, like everything Islam says to do, the preaching that Islam says is haram to them. So
Yeah,
just
so
like
that which is halal, they don't want to follow, basically, is what you're saying.
no, what I'm saying is for them to go out of the bounds of their belief and start to accept yours
Yeah.
is the same as you right now leaving Islam to accept another religion, which seems inconceivable to you. So you see how that is an obstacle. Someone
No,
being
no.
in another religion is such a huge obstacle.
No, I completely. It's actually not inconceivable to me, and I'll explain why. But I completely understand where you're coming from. I completely get where you're coming from. The reason why I wouldn't say it's an obstacle is because are there not Christians who become Muslims, and are there not Muslims who even become Christians? There's people who step out of
But
these
the
barriers.
majority of people don't, right? Like just there are people who leave the bounds of halal and haram and become kuffar, right? Like some people don't care. I myself don't care about what's haram anymore. Like that's
Sure,
still not the
understand.
majority of
But
people.
then, sorry, I don't. I'm trying. I really don't want to interrupt you. That's why I want to be fair. But you know, the reason why I wanted to finish a point there before you cut me. But the reason why I was saying is that this example that I just gave you, the fact that Christians become Muslims, the fact that Muslims become Christians. But guess what? That Christian became a Muslim can go back to being a Christian. That Muslim becomes a Christian can go back to being a Muslim. We have free will. Okay, we make judgments. We have our own actions and decisions. Okay, just because we do a certain action doesn't mean we'll be doing that action forever. There's people who learn, they make decisions, they regret that decision, they come back, they make mistakes, they sin, they fall into haram, they come back out, they learn from their experiences. That's where from their experiences they can see, okay, Islam says this legislation. Let me see how my experience matches up with this legislation, with this rule. Okay, do you know what? There's actually some people, even people used to hate Islam. Now they realize, you know what, it makes sense why Islam has this rule. Yes, it's strict. Yes, they don't sugarcoat it, but now I understand the wisdom behind it. As they grow older, you see this on on YouTube, etc. You see many people who used to hate Islam
But
before.
if I were to acknowledge that is any way relevant to the truth, then I would acknowledge that anyone who says anything the other way around is also relevant to the truth. These examples don't really prove
But
anything.
you can't have two truths. You can't have two truths. One will contradict the other.
Here's what I was trying to explain to you is you see that no one can honestly disagree with you about this specific belief, but about anything else, someone can honestly disagree with you, right? Like about any other thing that Islam, a good person can disagree with you and they're not a bad person for doing so.
But my point is, I don't even know fully whether they are honest or not. I cannot make that judgment. I cannot be 100%
We're talking
certain.
about hypotheticals, right?
But this is what I'm saying. Dealing with these hypotheticals, right? I don't think it does the situation justice. I feel like
I think it does. Yeah. Let's take this hypothetical. Let's say there are two we can assume are good people, right? Who disagree about taxes, about raising or lowering taxes. Can we say that hypothetically two good people can disagree and have different conclusion despite both of them wanting what's best for themselves and their community?
We can say that it's definitely possible for, let's say, someone to honestly believe in what they believe in. But at the end of the day, right? So this is what I'm saying. So someone who believes in let's say someone who believes in raising taxes, they genuinely believe in raising taxes. Let's say someone who believes in lowering taxes, they genuinely believe in lowering taxes, right? But one thing that may not be clear to us is, for example, the one who believes in raising taxes, maybe because they want to do that because it benefits them in a particular financial situation.
No, without
but
maybes.
They're not mentioning
without
it.
maybes. We're talking about a hypothetical because
matter,
your maybes, your maybes.
Because with your hypotheticals, what you're trying to do, I respectfully, by the way, this is a great conversation, by the way. So if I say, please don't take it personally, yeah. With these hypotheticals, you're intentionally trying to limit my options and put me in a corner. But
no, I'm trying to expose you to the one problem in the religion, because the examples that you say by saying maybe this, maybe that, you're trying to introduce impurity to get religion out of it scot-free. We're saying in an example where two people are honest, okay? Forget the maybes. Two people we know are honest. And sincerely, one agrees that raising the taxes in their community is better. One thinks that lowering is better. Can we agree that hypothetical is possible?
Yeah, no, I'm saying it's definitely possible for them to honestly believe in what they believe in.
Right, and practically,
let's put aside the maybes. Let's put aside the maybes. Let's say let's forget whether what they have a secret agenda. Let's forget that, right? I'm saying when it comes to certain matters, of course there are people. I remember I said this point earlier. In all forms of life, people honestly disagree with that. That's why I gave the example of football. It was a very small kind of trivial example, but it's an example that makes sense. There's people who honestly believe this team is better than this team has won more trophies. This is an example. It proves the point, right? I already said that. I already said
it doesn't really
people who honestly believe this. But that's just why I'm saying your question is, how come you don't apply that same standard to religion, right? This is what you're saying.
Yes. So if you acknowledge that hypothetically two honest, good, well-intentioned people, all that stuff, can disagree about something, right?
Yeah.
And both of them with good intentions are disagreeing.
Because Aladdin, religion, it's not based on just their belief, it's also based on their actions as well. So for example, let's say they believe honestly that Islam is the truth, but then they still do things in their life where they're still sinning and they're still doing things
that's another maybe. That's another maybe. We're talking about two people. One believes Islam is the truth.
Disqualifying the maybes, but the maybes are integral. It's a part of life. It's so
no, because the maybes are getting you out of the case, which is obviously the one that Muslims have the most difficulty with. The case where an honest person doesn't agree with Islam, or not just doesn't agree, doesn't believe that it's actually from God, right?
Yes.
You're saying that possibility can exist in every other domain except in religion.
Because people who honestly don't believe, let's say in Islam and whatnot, they honestly don't believe in Islam, okay? And let's say they were, trying to be honest to themselves, maybe and whatnot. Even with their belief itself, God won't accept that, because God is the one who decides, and we believe God is the one he won't be unjust to his creation. Isn't that the most important thing?
So wait. Let's pause here.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, in every domain except religion, two honest people can disagree, not because of maybes, not because of bad intentions, not because of malicious reasons. But when it comes to Islam, two honest people can disagree, but God doesn't accept that, because God decides what's good and bad.
No, because the reason why is because you're forcing me to work within your maybes, not with the maybes. That's why I'm
forcing you to face the most ideal example.
The thing is, I don't believe in disqualifying these maybes. I think you have to have these maybes in there.
Then that's a good thing that we can.
In order for the maybes
that's good to point out.
That's good to point out. Situation won't really work.
No, that's good to point out. So you don't believe that anyone can. Basically, it changes the qualifications of this situation. You're saying you don't believe that anyone can honestly not believe in Islam. That's what the maybes are saying.
Well, I believe 100% with certainty, right, that someone who is genuinely good-hearted, sincere, who's looking for the truth, who's adamant, who's looking, there's no way God can turn that person away. A clear statement I'm making. I hope I'm clear. Am I clear in that?
No, I want to clarify it further. So,
okay, sure.
Because you're always leaving out the other side of it. So you're saying if someone isn't convinced by Islam, they must not have been honest and sincere enough.
Somewhere in the journey, somewhere in the process, they did something wrong, which they did not attain God's guidance. And
that's what we're saying. Basically, if someone doesn't believe in it's not possible for a good person and good, honest person to not believe in Islam.
This is the reason I went back. You kept saying good person, good, honest person. You're saying that in accordance to your own standard. To someone else, they may not be good and honest.
We've defined the standard. Someone who doesn't harm other people and does things that benefit people around him. But then we need to define
harm. Something you may consider not harmful, I may consider harmful.
So the point of
this is why I'm
your
saying,
standards. So what you're saying is
are so important. We can't.
What you're saying is good is only defined by Allah, and therefore anyone who doesn't believe in Allah is not good. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, because then again, remember, it goes back to morality. Where do you get your morality from? Objective morality. These are the discussions which really matter and which contribute to this conversation we're having.
So can we agree that that's actually what's under what you're saying, is that someone, what I just said earlier, someone who doesn't believe in God cannot be good, because by definition, to be a good person, you have to believe in God.
No. When you say good, this is what I'm saying.
Someone in the eyes of Allah.
Look, let me ask you a question. If someone's good in some areas and not good in other areas, would you say that person is good?
Why are you answering with a question? Because then we're going down another path.
What was your
statement?
Question?
I'm trying to rephrase what you said.
What was your question? Sorry, I want to make sure that I'm answering every single one of your questions, because I have no reason to shy away from your questions.
What you were saying. You were saying is basically you were talking about how do you define good? Well, what standards? Some people might think something's good. Some people. So to summarize all that, you're saying. A person cannot be deemed good in the eyes of Allah unless they're a believer.
If they're disobeying Allah, yeah, then we
unless
cannot
they're a
say this
believer,
person.
like disobeying, because this language is very loaded. Because if I were to
Yeah.
speak about disobeying Allah, they
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
believe they're
it's-
disobeying anything, because they're not you. You believe that you're disobeying Allah if you don't follow Him.
But it's important, and I don't want to constantly mention, but the edge cases as well. So excluding those, yes, 100%. Excluding the edge cases, yes, the person who, let's say they weren't a believer, they died on disbelief, etc. You know, for you, someone like you may say they're good. I can say they weren't good. They weren't good.
So
if they died
basically,
on
that all
disbelief.
boils down to, right? But that all boils down to
Their
no
obedience to
good
Islam.
people, no good people die as a kafir if they receive the message and all that kind of stuff. No good person rejects
Yes.
Islam.
Yeah, or else they wouldn't enter the hellfire. Do you understand what I mean?
But
So for
here,
them to enter
okay.
the hellfire,
That's
yeah.
good that you said, or else they wouldn't enter the hellfire. I want to highlight that because
Yeah.
you're using the conclusion as reasoning. You can't say because when enter the hellfire is part of the conclusion.
No.
So-
The conclusion is just another factor. That the conclusion is.
If
I'm
the
not using
conclusion is a
conclusion
factor,
just
that's
alone.
circular. If the conclusion is a factor, that's circular.
When you say circular, what do you mean? What do you mean by when it's circular?
You used the word because. You said, yeah, no
Mhm.
good person doesn't accept Islam, blah, 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 with all the conditions that we set forth, that, got the message and everything, because they go to hell. The because is the conclusion. You're saying because they go to hell, therefore it must be, like, it's circular. You're saying that God, only people who go to hell deserve it, therefore anyone who doesn't believe in Islam deserves it. And you know what I mean? Like, you're using the because as part of your reasons.
I'm not using the because on its own. I'm not using the
Even if
because
it's
on its own.
partly, like, even if it's partly in there,
For
that's
example,
partly
I may
circular
know
reasoning.
someone, and I may see his actions, I see his behavior, and then I just know this guy, he's not a good person. And then he dies as a disbeliever. I say, makes sense.
What does that have to do with anything? You're saying
Because
you
I'm
saw a
basically
bad
saying
person die as a
the
disbeliever,
hellfire
therefore
isn't just. I'm not using just the because. I'm not using that. I'm just saying that's just a factor. So if they are in the hellfire,
if it's a
we must
factor, that's circular reasoning. If you use it as a factor, if you use your conclusion as a factor, that's circular reasoning.
So
Even if
to
it's
you,
one of the
I
factors.
don't know what you mean by circular reasoning, etc. If that's circular reasoning,
I mean,
and
we were
whatnot,
talking earlier, right?
Yeah.
And the conclusion was no good person doesn't believe in Islam if he's presented the Islam and all that kind of stuff. Because, you said because,
or he doesn't eventually be guided to Islam.
yeah, whatever, dies as a kafir.
Muslim,
No
yeah.
good
'Cause you have to
person.
remember, I'm sure you acknowledge as well, like you're a sincere person. Some of the Sahabas were some of the worst people before, right? Ibn Umar ibn Khattab.
Wait,
I mean, they
I
were
don't want to get
terrible.
off topic here. So to repeat what you said.
No, I'm saying
no,
it links with the topic. I'm just saying that there were people who were very bad. They used to disbelieve. I think there were even people who
yeah,
used to kill
there's
their
a
own
lot that I can
daughters,
say about
etc.
that, which I don't want to get into that, because I would say a lot of the
Okay.
Sahaba were acting up just because of political reasons. But that's besides the point.
Oh,
What
okay.
I'm saying is, you said no good person wouldn't accept Islam, given that they got the right message eventually before they die, all that stuff. You said that because then they would go to hell, and it doesn't make sense. Then you use the conclusion of them going to hell as part of your reasoning to why no good person wouldn't accept Islam.
No, I just added an extra layer of reasoning. I just said
That's not if it's a factor, it's circular.
I don't know why, like, if you keep saying it's circular, okay, like, to you maybe it's circular. I don't have a problem in saying this. This is no problem for me. Maybe it's a problem for you, that's fine. This is why I say we can agree to disagree. But I'm just simply saying, if there's anyone in hell, they deserved it, and it's because they weren't good. That's literally just what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that just that alone, right? I'm not saying just that alone. I'm just making a simple statement that to us, this is what we believe is true. If you're in hell, you're not a good person. If you're in this worldly life, right, and you didn't become a Muslim, you didn't follow Islam, and then you wasn't good enough to be guided by Allah. Same way, there's Muslims, by the way, and remember this is why we say there's Muslims who enter hellfire. There's Muslims, they've been guided, but they still do wrong. But what does Allah do? Does Allah just give them a free ticket? No, Allah punishes them accordingly.
That example doesn't concern me in any way, because it still is not about the core issue here, which is a good person who's not a believer. That doesn't exist.
Aladdin, if you don't mind me asking, brother, what answer are you looking for? And then let me try to see if we can work together and kind of work around it. Is that okay?
Sure. There are a lot of Muslims who acknowledge that, and this may not be consistent with Islam, but they acknowledge that a good person, a well-meaning, honest person, all that kind of stuff, people can disagree about religion and be good people. But I think that what you're saying is if someone doesn't believe in Islam, right, if it's presented to them correctly and all that, they're going to hell, and using that as a reason, therefore it must be the case that everyone who doesn't agree with Islam is not a good person.
Yeah, literally, we have no problem in this. If you're someone who you disbelieve in Islam, yeah, then for us to say, yes, you are exactly a good person. For example, they may be good in certain areas. They may be a good person in terms of they speak well, they have good manners, etc. But in terms of saying holistically good, we cannot say this, because if you disobey Allah, you transgress against His violation. You deny the Creator who even gave you existence. We cannot say holistically this is a good person.
But you see it as denial. The other person sees it as I'm not convinced. Just like you wouldn't see that you're denying Christianity. You're not convinced by Christianity.
Yeah, I'm not convinced by Christianity, and from what I've seen, I've denied the religion as well because I don't agree with it. It seems very.
Are you denying the truth of? Are you denying the truth of Christianity, or you don't believe it?
I don't see the truth in Christianity for me to even try to deny
any
truth.
Yeah, see, that's a different word than denial, and that's what I'm saying. You say someone who denied Allah deserves to be punished. They also see it the way you see Christianity. You don't see the truth in Christianity. They don't see the truth in Islam.
But this is what I'm saying. When would have to listen to the reasoning. Would have to listen to their kind of arguments, etc.
Yeah, and you think no one has good reasons
with it because they're following their desires rather than.
Do you know see, what I mean? Again, that's an edge case. Again, that's a maybe. Like again, that's inserting reasons that
keep saying edge case maybe as if it's just a minority amount of people. But how did you come to the conclusion that it's an edge case?
How did you come to conclusion that honest people can't disagree about Islam? You used the conclusion.
Then I could say you answered my question with a question yourself. That
because I'm trying to demonstrate the point here. These edge cases that you're bringing, these edge cases are not even they're caricatures. They're archetypes of believers. You're saying people don't believe because they want to follow their desires. People don't believe because blah blah blah. There is no case.
That's a possibility, because you said, right, there's people who.
We're talking about the ideal case, right? The ideal case.
Yeah, I'm answering you. Yeah, so you was just saying the reason why I said that to you is because you're saying the people who honestly they don't see the truth in Islam. They don't see it. Yeah. So I said this is something that will be looked into. It will be looked into, and God will know. God will know what's in their heart. This is what we believe. We as people don't know what's in their heart. We don't know, how their mentality works, the kind of reasoning that they're doing. There's some people who did honestly disagree with Islam, but then they find their way into Islam and they become Muslim.
See, but does anyone who honestly disagreed with Islam dies a kafir? Like that's the case that you're not seeing.
They honestly disagreed with Islam, as in they genuinely felt that it was the wrong religion, but their reasoning was faulty. Their reasoning was faulty, and so therefore they'll be punished upon that.
Okay, yeah, we will have to agree to disagree on that, because I've been trying to get you to see how in every category except Islam, you can understand that someone disagrees despite being honest, but only because of the conclusion of Islam, you have to concede that no one can disagree unless they're a bad person.
100%. We'll definitely agree to disagree, because the reason why is because, remember, religion, right? It's, for example, a very separate to, let's say, a disagreement upon, let's say, football or politics. Religion is a very clear rule stipulated, halal, haram. What's good, what's bad. Do you understand? So we use that.
I disagree with every part of that. I disagree with every part of that. It's not even clear what's halal and haram in Islam, but it doesn't even matter whether Islam is black and white or not.
What's clear? There are things that are clear. What's halal?
Yeah, but there are a lot of people who disagree about what's halal and haram, but all that is irrelevant to Islam. Is exactly like politics, like science, like every other thing that people like, except that science, at least you can verify things, but it's like every other thing that people have an opinion on. Right. The only difference here, you said the difference is that it's black and white. No, that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, no. Again, this is what I'm saying. It's just a matter of we agree to disagree. But the reason why I'm trying to unpack this conversation, right? Because I understand where you're coming from. Despite me disagreeing with you, I do understand where you're coming from. But what I'm saying is we're looking at a pixel rather than the whole picture. We need to unpack this because there's branches of this tree, right? We need to unpack ask these questions about where does morality come from? Why are there these rules stipulated? Let's look at some rules. How come they exist? For us to unpack that,
all these questions, every one of these questions is a philosophical debate and disagreement and conversation. And honest people there are a lot of philosophers out there who disagree with each other, not because they think that they know the truth, the ultimate true philosophy, and they just want to follow their desires. Honest people disagree on philosophy. Every single avenue you mentioned is an avenue for disagreement. And you don't see how good people can disagree?
Wait, hold 1 second. So are you denying that it's not possible for people to unfairly not give religion its due fair credit and chance? Like there's people who genuinely don't even give religion a chance because of the stigma that they may hear from other people.
I think that's a non sequitur, because we're not talking even about that case. We're talking about people who've given Islam its full chance and given it due diligence and everything. Everything you just mentioned.
And they're sincere and they're honest, you're saying?
Yes,
they don't have a malicious intent.
Yes, I'm telling you, like every avenue you mentioned, like you talked about, let's talk about the source of morality you mentioned, or something of the sort.
And you're saying they're genuinely seeking the truth, yeah? And they're sincere, open, honest. So maybe Allah will guide this person.
See, again, there's a maybe, but there are people who die that way. You're basically saying nobody who's honest would not end up a Muslim.
Can you think of someone who was 100% sincere, open, honest, who looked into Islam and then they died as a kafir?
Every person who you'd point out, every person that I point out as this person died as a kafir, you'd say, well, we don't know what's in their heart. How can we know that they were honest when they died? So what does that example have to do with anything?
Because that is true, because we don't know what reasoning were they using, were they being unjust with their reasoning, with their argumentation, were they being insincere. It's true, we don't know how this person was using his rationale.
But yet you say we don't know,
biased against his own desires rather than
you say we don't know, but you deny the possibility that an honest person can disagree. But you also say we don't know what's in their heart, but you know with certainty that an honest person cannot disagree.
No, yes, because an honest person who's genuinely sincere, we believe, cannot disagree, because remember, we believe in Islam. We believe, I'm saying this because we believe in a religion. Of course, Allah has made it clear within the Quran, right, that He does not guide the people with bad intent or with the rebellious people. Remember, I gave you the chapter and the verse as well. So of course, we as the Muslims, we believe in this, and the reason why we believe in this as well is because we as human beings, we don't know every single human being, we don't know the rationale, etc. And so this is one reason why Islam, it means submission. We submit to Allah. There's not everything. As human beings, we're not going to know everything. There's some things.
No one's saying that like all of what you're saying is kind of a non sequitur to what we're talking about.
What do you mean by non sequitur, by the way?
Like all of it's almost unrelated. Like we wouldn't know everything. Yeah, no one's like, everything that I'm saying has nothing to do with knowing everything. No point that I was trying to make involves me knowing everything at all. I'm just dealing with specific cases to demonstrate a point. And like I was trying to explain to you, honest people, like you even gave an example, right? You were talking about, well, we should talk about morality. We should talk about, all these philosophical concepts. Every single one of those topics, philosophers have disagreed on since the dawn of time and writing and reading. And that it demonstrates my point. All of these people disagree on things that should ultimately lead them to this one religion.
But you're acting as if it's just their belief alone that leads them into the hellfire. But what I'm saying is, God doesn't just look at, okay, this person, did he just give, for example, right? Let me.
Belief is a big factor, right? Belief is the big factor.
No doubt, belief is a big factor, but so are your actions as well. The actions that you commit. So let me give you an example.
Belief is the most important factor. Like, let's make that clear. Yeah. Like, forget the actions. No person with all the good actions can enter heaven without being a believer.
Yes, no, definitely, 100%. Like, obviously, excluding the edge cases, etc. That's 100% the case. You need to have the belief. You need to have the tawheed, the oneness, belief in oneness of God, etc. 100%. Yeah, we're in agreement there, correct? Sure. So what I'm saying is this, though. However, we cannot dismiss and pretend as if it's only belief.
No,
it's only belief.
Everything else is irrelevant. Like what you agreed with me on, everything else becomes irrelevant.
How do you know it's irrelevant? Because I'm telling you even earlier, right? Let's say someone, okay, let's say I'm trying to work within the hypothetical kind of scenario that you, I guess, put me in, okay? Let's work within that, okay? I'm happy to, that's fine. I'm saying, let's say someone, they tried and they, sincerely, were honest, etc. I am making the claim that Allah will guide this person if they have genuine good intention and they're seeking the truth. Because for Allah to not guide that person, if Islam is the truth, Allah wants this goodness for everyone. Allah wants it for everyone. So why would Allah not give a person who's sincere Islam, the truth? Then I would say, hold on, that's quite unjust of God. Why would God not give Islam to this person only for him to end up
You're
in the
starting to
hellfire?
get my point. You're starting to get my point.
God being the most just.
You're starting to get my point.
No, but
I'm saying it is a contradiction. You're saying it can't be a contradiction because the rule says so. But there are people who die. Like you're basically saying we don't know what's in people's hearts, but we can guarantee that no one dies an honest kafir.
I've been understanding your point. It's just that I disagree with it. Honestly, I disagree. I've been understanding. This is what I'm saying. I completely get where you're coming from. And what you're saying is not so nonsensical. No, I completely get where you're coming from, bro. I completely get it. But I completely disagree as well. Why? Because it contradicts the idea of God being the most just. Because how would God be just in that case then?
I just want to highlight what you just said. You agree with what I'm saying, or no, sorry, you understand where I'm coming from. You understand what I'm saying, but you completely disagree because it contradicts what God says, or it contradicts God's justice.
Because for God.
But here's the thing.
God,
okay, that's a very big if, because don't you see what's keeping you from agreeing with me is because you believe in God. But my position, right, would get you, like, if you have my position, you would see that God doesn't make sense. So we are basically in an agreement. The only difference is you believe in God, therefore, otherwise you would see exactly what I'm coming from and you would agree with it.
No, you're assuming that if I was in the same position as you, I would be in agreement with you. I could be in the same position as you. For example, let's say I wasn't a Muslim. I may still disagree with you, and I may say, do you know what? It makes sense. For example, and there are people out there who are like this. They're agnostic people. They believe that, okay, maybe there is some kind of creator. And yes, I do believe a hell and heaven makes sense. Because where would a lot of the bad people go to? Where's the justice? Someone who raped your daughter, okay, he just enters the same grave that your daughter will also.
Why would we always have to go to those examples?
Where's the justice? I'm leading to my point. Believe me, I'm gonna intertwine it. Yeah, just give me some chance. Just give me a chance, please. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to use the example of rape all the time.
No, I'm not using it all the time, but I'm just.
Or like every Muslim I speak to always talks about this example. Like, can we use something else?
I don't know about every Muslim, but like, don't take it personal or anything. I'm just using an example to try help us both out, to try kind of iron out, and maybe we can see each other better. Yeah. But the reason why I'm using the example is because, firstly, an agnostic will say, okay, it kind of makes sense that hell and heaven, and an element of justice is there, etc. Do you see what I mean?
No, I don't. And that's a whole other discussion, because someone can do something bad. And in my worldview, yeah, it sucks. People are going to die and there's not going to be justice. Suck it up. We have to get justice.
No, when I said, do you see what I mean? I mean, like, you do admit there are agnostic who believe this. There are agnostics, they have this belief, right? They say, okay, I may not know which religion is correct, but I do agree that it makes sense for there to be some kind of creator. It does make sense for there to be maybe a heaven and a hell. Like, you agree that there are some agnostic people out there who have this belief, correct?
I don't know. There might be some agnostic people out there who think that there's going to be eternal justice or cosmic justice. Yeah. Sure.
That's it. Yeah, that's what I meant when I said, you see what I mean? Like, so yeah. So carry on what you were saying. I don't want to.
So, what I was saying is, here's where we agree to disagree, I suppose.
Yeah.
I see that every example that you use to build up to why people should think and conclude Islam, like, is there, what is the source of morality? All that kind of, all these questions.
Yeah. Like, by what standard do we go by? Yeah.
All these questions, right? People disagree on. Good people, honest people, whatever, without malice, without intention, disagree on these topics and will not conclude Islam. Many of them will not conclude Islam. And it has nothing to do with whether or not they deserve heaven or hell. That invalidates Islam's point here.
It's not deserving of whether it's heaven and hell. That's according to you.
Yeah, according to what I'm saying, good people can disagree.
Who said we should follow you, though? Like,
no one said you should follow me. But I'm making the case. I'm making the case that in every category of belief or opinion, every category except religion, we're on the same page, you and I, that people can disagree about things and not out of malice.
You can be held to the same level, because some categories it's not dependent upon
but
salvation.
We agree for every category, except you made a special category for religion to say that except religion, because circular and godly reasons why this one's special. But I'm more consistent about that.
But remember, brother, right? Remember that you're forcing me to exclude the maybes, whereas I actually want to include the maybes. So I'm trying to work within your
glad that you're saying that
to make you happy. I'm doing it as you're the host. I'm doing it to make you happy and content.
No,
But I
it's
don't
it's
agree
not for
with the
me. It's
parameters
because
that
all the
you said.
maybes are a waste of time. Like all the maybes are basically trying to move away from answering the ideal case, which
But
happens more often than people want to admit.
But you know the ideal case? The ideal case is not the reality of the whole situation. The ideal case is not the reality. These maybes are
You're
very
saying that
prevalent
based on
within
what?
life.
How do you? You're basically saying these maybes that you're trying to introduce are saying,
Yeah.
basically, you're saying that everyone who doesn't agree has malicious intention or is delusional or is actually behind the scenes a bad person. It's basically character assassination because you don't want to deal with the ideal case, which happens more often than you
What if
want to
those
know.
people actually did have those malicious
See, again, a
intent?
lot
Would
of
it be
what
correct
ifs.
to?
A
But
lot of what ifs.
But this is what I'm saying. It's the double standard. So when you use what ifs or when you exclude maybes and you use these hypothetical scenarios, I'm not complaining because I actually enjoy it. It allows a fruitful discussion. It's good, you know. And that's why, even though you're imposing these parameters on me, I'm not complaining so much. You know, firstly, I respect you're the host, so you can do that if you wish. Number two, it's a good exercise challenge as well, and I'm
No,
trying to work with
I don't want
people's
to. I don't want you
space.
to do it as a favor. I wanted to do it because it demonstrates the point that without these all these like poisoning the well arguments of they have other reasons, maybe they're bad people. If we're just dealing
Is
with
there a
the case,
possibility that they could have other reasons? Yes or no?
again, this is like the poisoning the well method
But
of
I'm just
character
asking a simple
assassination.
question because you know me, I don't shy away from answering your question. Is it a possibility that people can have different ulterior motives?
The
which
reason why I
may-
don't want to answer is because it's a non sequitur. Say I agree. Yeah, it's well.
it's a
Here's
possibility, right? Let's be honest. It
well, yeah,
is.
it's possible. Like, can you give me an example that someone doesn't want to, that knows Islam is the truth, but doesn't want to believe anyway?
No, I'm saying it's a possibility that someone who may disagree with Islam may do so because of an unjust reason or because they didn't give, it's not just Islam or Christianity, they didn't give its fair share of research. They kind of dismissed it unfairly. That's a possibility, right?
Wait, let's clarify that. So I'm agreeing that it's possible that someone didn't accept the truth of Islam because they didn't do enough research.
Not just accept the truth, whether it be Islam or Christian. Yeah, because there's people out there, just because of stigma alone, because of the media, they never gave their fair share of research into religion.
That's a very different scenario. So what you're saying is there are some people who won't join Islam because they have a bad image of Islam because of 9/11. Is that what you're saying?
Let's just say, as an example, let's work with that. Yeah,
Sure,
and
that
therefore
may
they
happen.
don't research into Islam.
Yeah, where do we build from there? Let's say I say yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, and would you say that was just of them? Because they held a fair, an irrational fair, let's say of Muslims or of Islam, that therefore they didn't want to go about and do their own due
I'm
diligence.
hesitant to go down that line of questioning because again, it's chasing a maybe. We're not talking about the ideal case here. So if we're saying Islam is the truth, okay, let's take this hypothetical. Let's take this hypothetical.
You can consider that as a maybe as well, though.
Let's say Islam is the truth. Let's say Islam is the truth. Let's say Islam is the truth, right? And someone saw a terrorist event. Let's say Islam is the truth, right? In this reality,
but
someone saw a terrorist. Like I'm giving you your hypothetical on a golden plate.
You could say we're both saying maybes. Your ideal case is also a maybe as well.
No.
It's also a maybe. Maybe that person was so true, so honest, had no malicious intention. This is a maybe as well. If you deny that this is a maybe,
Islam's way is just mischaracterizing disbelievers. Islam's way is misrepresenting and mischaracterizing. I'm giving you the ideal scenario for you. Okay, let's give you your scenario on a golden platter. Islam is the truth in this hypothetical, and someone doesn't join it or doesn't even look into Islam because of some terrorist event, and they think that doesn't seem like a good religion. I'm not even going to even look into it, right? Let's assume that's the scenario. Does that person deserve to go to hell?
Yes.
No.
This is where we disagree. This is what I'm saying. This is where we disagree.
This is where we disagree. Say, like, because that could apply to many, like, you don't really understand the factors that go into someone making a decision, right? Because to them, it's not, I know Islam is the truth, but I'm not going to join because someone did a terrorist attack.
Not, but I know it's more, it's because what they did was unjust. And God will see the action of this.
It's not unjust. God would understand the factors that go into someone making a decision. God would know that they dismissed it the way that you dismiss Christianity or other religions. Just like you don't.
I don't dismiss Christianity because I've seen something KKK or they do. No, because I researched it. I don't go into.
Have you researched every religion, or aren't there religions that you dismiss just because it doesn't look right?
No, yeah, from what I've seen, from what's within the scripture,
right. But have you dug deep into every religion or did you just dismiss some
When
of
you
them
say
just
every
because?
religion, there could be so many religions. So probably religions they
Exactly my
If you
point.
go through, no. I understand your point. I understand your point. But what I'm saying is, and by the way, we're still on this life journey. You know, God knows I pray to God I'll never, leave Islam. I mean, if it's the truth, may Allah keep me on the truth. And you know what I mean? But I always will continue researching. I remember what I told you earlier before this discussion.
No,
If there's anything that pops up, which is clear within the Quran,
let me ask you this, because this is the scenario. The scenario that I just gave you.
I'm not telling you, Aladdin, by the way, I'll never ever leave Islam, even if there's
I understand that. I appreciate that. But I'm saying what you're doing already is exactly what the hypothetical that I gave you, people who didn't join the truth because of terrorists. You're kind of doing that with other religions, not because of terrorism, but unless you investigate every single religion you've ever heard of to the core, which you haven't done, right? Maybe you've investigated
but we was using the terrorist example. Basically, the point that we was using that example for was because
why haven't you dug into like ancient North America?
They look down upon Muslims, and therefore
hey, what about native religions? Have you dug into those?
When you say native religions, give me an example.
Have you heard of native religions? Like religions followed by the natives?
No. I haven't heard these examples, and I can continue researching it, and I can see, okay, is there some kind of wisdom behind it? But then I would say this: why would God?
Here's the thing. There's this. Look, here's the problem with Islam.
To everyone else.
It's accessible to you. It's not accessible to others. Here's the problem with the world, like the selfish view from an Islamic point of view is thinking, if someone dismisses Islam because of circumstance or whatever reason, that's unjust to Islam. That's not because God destined it to happen that way. That's because those people deserve hell. But if I dismiss other religions, well, they just didn't catch my attention.
No, it's not just about just catching your attention. The thing is, I'm answering your question, and then you immediately, you start making statement. I'm saying this is one example, right? If there's certain religions and whatnot that are out there, yeah, and which aren't clear, and if God, I'm saying God would want the truth for everyone, right? Or would you say no, he doesn't want it for everyone? He just wants it for
do you see that Islam is clearly the truth for everyone, or isn't it also very unclear to people outside of it? It's the same exact thing that you're saying, but someone who's not a Muslim could say the same thing. Like, why isn't Islam the clearest religion in the world and the only religion that makes sense?
No, because this is why we believe this is the whole reason why Satan exists. Satan corrupts, and he even told Allah, I'm going to misguide your people. We even believe in innovation. People believe in bid'ah because these are tests and trials.
That minor religion that you dismiss, right? They also have a shaitan, and they also have you just don't see how parallel these examples can be with other religions.
The thing is, right, and again, I'm tying it all back in. I'm being very clear, okay? Even going back to, let's say, the 9/11 example, etc. The reason why I said this person would deserve hell, okay, is because they didn't even give their fair share or sincerity to try research. They immediately.
But no one owes Islam that kind of stuff.
Their behavior, their character, right, their manners, it was bad. It was poor.
No, it's not a character issue. Just like you don't owe every religion on earth a deep dive, you don't owe it that. You're not a bad person if you don't deep dive into every religion. People don't owe Islam anything. They don't owe Islam an investigation. Just like you don't owe other religions an investigation. It doesn't make people bad people.
So I get what you're saying. You're saying that people, even if they don't even want to bother researching, therefore they don't deserve any kind of punishment. But what I'm saying is that's according to you. So who says we should go by your belief and your standard?
I think we have to wrap up soon, but no, it's not about my standard. I'm saying if you apply this expectation that you have of other people to research and find Islam and all that stuff, if you apply it to every single religion, you haven't done your due diligence with every religion on earth.
Yeah, no, this is what I'm saying, right? With due diligence, okay, if there's certain things which are clear, let's say within the Bible, hypothetically, within the Bible, it says rape is allowed. Immediately, I can look at that and
Dude, within Islam, that's also why is that always the example that Muslims bring up?
Okay, sorry, not let's say not rape. Sorry, let's say murder now. Yeah, let's say within the Bible, okay, it says murder is okay, even if you murder innocent people, it's okay. That's enough for me to immediately dismiss the whole Bible.
Don't you see that Islam has many of these examples? Like, don't you see that many examples of what you're saying? Like in Islam, slavery is okay, sex slavery is okay. God ordered the killing of a child, and I left the religion because, like, let's say someone gave the same exact reasoning as you, but about Islam.
No, because for example, right, you mentioned about, let's just say, apostasy law, this and that. We believe there's wisdom behind this. When it comes to slavery, obviously we don't call it
What if a
slavery.
Christian told you, I
say,
believe there's wisdom in the thing that you
while
said
I'm
is
answering, you
nonsensical?
cut me off. It's so hard because while I'm answering one thing and you cut me off and you present another thing, then I'm like, damn, okay,
Because
should I
you're
answer this
contradicting
one now?
yourself.
I'm not contradicting myself at all, but you're not really being fair and letting me speak, brother. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to be fair to you.
I worry that if I let you speak, you're going to continue into a different point. What you just said right now,
To a
right?
different point at all.
Like, no, I want to stick to the point. You just said, right, in the Bible, say it says murder is okay, which is, we're not making the case, but say that is the truth.
This is why I said you didn't hear me correctly, brother. I said, let's just say, for argument's sake, I said hypothetically. Let's say the Bible
I know,
says,
and I
you
just
can
said
murder innocent
hypothetically, yeah.
people.
Hypothetically, say the Bible says that. Hypothetically, say the Christian says, well, we have reasons and there's wisdom. It's
So
the
that's
same
what we
exact
look
thing as
into
what you
those
just told me.
reasons. We look into those reasons. How can you possibly justify murdering innocent people? I don't know how you can.
How can you
even bring up
possibly
this.
justify someone murdering an apostate?
This is very justifiable. I can justify
You
that
see the
right
double
now,
standard?
Right,
You
it's
see?
not justifiable because I don't see an apostate as just an innocent person.
But
this is what I'm saying.
This, without delving into the
views.
specific example, that's
you're
I
saying
can.
It's innocent by your view. He's not innocent by my
Just
view.
like the Christian can justify what's
here.
in their book by their view, not by your view. You don't see the double standard here?
So we hold the two, we compare the two, and we say, okay, which one makes more sense? Which one is more
To
superior?
you, it makes more sense. But to the Christian, theirs makes more sense.
That's why you're the apostate and I'm the Muslim, and that's why we're having this discussion, to try and make sense of each other.
The difference is I can understand that you believe, and I can accept that you, despite you're wrong about your conclusions, I can accept that you're a good person, despite even believing that there's heaven and hell and I deserve to go to hell. I can,
Yes.
But you don't have it in you to see that the other person is thinking exactly like you, and neither of you has a good method to achieve the truth.
No, it's okay. So you're admitting you don't have a good method to seek the truth?
No, I'm saying, like, when it comes to, I never made a claim about does God exist or not, but I'm saying that Islam has never been demonstrated.
Do you deny
the
existence of a creator, by the way? Do you think that's not possible?
Deny, like we said earlier, implies the denying of the truth. It's a loaded word.
Okay, do you what's your belief? Do you believe that there is no creator at all?
I don't think we have any good reason to believe in a specific creator with a personality. I don't know why we came to be.
Sure, I understand. The thing is, there's so many different topics. I really want to give justice to all of them. You know, you mentioned about the apostasy one as well. I mean, we can have a conversation about that.
Without even getting into it, I was using it as an example.
Question unanswered. I really want to make sure I answer every single one of your questions, and because I don't shy away from answering.
Trust me, I don't think
I'm answering one question and I'm not finished, and then you ask me another question. I'm jumping all over.
I was using it as an example. We don't even have to delve into it. Just like you were using a hypothetical from the Bible that, you know, we're just talking hypothetical.
I thought that was a genuine question. I didn't realize you was using it as an example.
I was saying hypothetically, just like you say, the Bible says, you know, this is bad and you think it's bad, but a Christian would say, but there are reasons. Now I'm telling you, the Quran says, or the Hadith says this, you would say, but there are reasons. You don't see that it's the same thing on the other side.
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing, and this is the reason why. Yes, they both have reasons. You can say that's the same, but it doesn't mean they both have the same level of reasoning. One could not make sense, and one could make sense. So we should follow the one that makes sense rather than the one that doesn't make sense.
You still see how circular that is. Everything I believe makes sense. Everything other people believe doesn't make sense.
Everything you're saying is just circular. Circular. If it's circular, to what's that? How is it circular? You're saying.
I've demonstrated it all. You just said right now, I've gave you an example, right? And you just assert that any example, any time that a Christian can try to explain away a problem in his faith, that's actually unjustified. Anytime you or Islam does it, that makes sense because Islam is the truth. It's circular.
No, it's important you don't put words in my mouth, because I didn't say any time. I didn't say any time a Christian says this, therefore they're wrong and it's unjustified. For example, there's some things Christians say which is true, which is completely legitimate, and we have no problem with it. There's some things a Muslim may say which is wrong. It's bang out of order, and it doesn't. And
but at the end of the day, Islam has ways to answer every contradiction.
I'm just saying. No, I'm just answering you. You said, yeah. Look, you know what you're saying. You're saying it's the same. I'm saying yes. They may both have reasons. That's the same. That's the similarity between them both. They both have reasons.
But ultimately, Islam's reasons are true. But ultimately, Islam's reasons are true, and ultimately, Christianity's reasons are
over
true.
Christianity, and then we need to look into it, dive into it, make a comparison, study both, analyze both. You know, just like that. This is what I'm saying. Compare both.
I know
It's
at the end of the day, we
influence.
have to agree to disagree, because I think I was just trying to get you to see how your thought process parallels exactly the thought process of someone in another religion. If you started in Christianity, you would have been saying the same exact things about Christianity. That's the
You're
problem.
assuming that because there's people who are born into Christianity and they become Muslim.
Right.
So
And the
your
exceptions
your
don't prove
jump
the
doesn't
rule. There
work.
are people who leave both ways. I have left Islam. Exceptions don't really prove the rule.
100%.
My point is the methodology that you're using, a Christian would say verbatim word for word, and it's the same exact thing.
And I don't have any problem with that. God will deal with them accordingly. And we'll see who's right on Judgment Day. Were the Christians right? Were the Muslims right? Were the Jews were right? We'll
All right.
see.
Okay.
This is literally like my point. And by the
I-
by the thank you again. By the I really appreciate. Like we were both very respectful. And forgive me if anyway did I come across rude in any
No,
way?
no, you didn't, and I'm not offended by anything. But
Oh, thank you so much. For
I mean,
that.
aside from, as much as I can't get offended about the idea that Islam dehumanizes people who apostatize, but aside from that,
yeah, but obviously, again,
we're
this
not
is
going to
what
get into that. But yeah,
sure. Maybe another time. Maybe I'll join if you are happy to have me on again. I'd love to join. It was a great conversation. But with regards to Islam, like I'll make this very clear. Islam isn't a religion of just feelings. Unfortunately, we can't please everyone. When you please one group, another group's going to be offended. Yeah, if you try to please the other
religion,
group, that group will be
faith is
offended.
very emotion based. Faith is always, we are emotional creatures. We have to admit it.
100%, no doubt about that. But this is where I'm saying there's certain rules. If we constantly have emotions, yeah, we need to set down some rules in place when no matter people are going to get offended, they have to accept in order to have a society that's
It's not
functional.
about people being offended. It's about how
This is why I
baseless
agree
it
with
is.
the apostasy law, blasphemy law, etc. But we can get into that another time, because for me this is no problem. I can justify this easily and
Of course you can. Yeah. All right. Well, this was fun. Thank you for calling, and
no, thank you,
talk
brother.
later.
I was gonna quickly ask about this. Can we just kind of summarize quickly what we both kind of?
No, I think there's not enough time, or else we'll have to rehash a lot of things. So we'll get to the next caller now.
All
right.
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right. We have one final caller. I just want to comment on the last thing that the caller has said, because this is very indicative of the difference between us here. So when I was saying his thought process is parallel to a believer of another religion, and both of them can use the same reasoning and stay in their lane, right? And he said, well, we'll see in the afterlife. We'll see who is right. We'll see who is wrong, and so on and so forth. My problem as a believer was that it's that, so we got to wait till the afterlife to see. But that just demonstrates that God is unfair, because both of us are using the same process. Both of us are using the same logic, the same bias, the same in-group bias. I saw that it's not a reliable method of finding the truth. If both of us can be honest and arrive and stay in our lanes of faith, me and the Christian or whoever else, if both of us can arrive at different conclusions and only find out in the afterlife, then how fair is that? Especially when a lot of it has to do with where you're born. Like, yeah, sure, conversions exist, but that's really besides the point. We're talking about the ideal case here, using the logic that we were, you can call it that kind of reasoning that we were talking about earlier. You can arrive at the same conclusion. A Muslim remains a Muslim, a kafir remains a kafir, a Christian remains a Christian. And I had a problem with that as a believer. I don't want to wait and find out on the day of judgment who's right. I don't want to be right and them being wrong. I think both of us deserve the same thing if we're following the same methodology. And to be honest, neither of us deserve heaven for having faith. That's not what makes a good person. But that's what I was trying to communicate. So, but I didn't want to make that point with the caller on the call, because then we would have started a little bit more. But yeah, anyway, we'll get to the last caller for the day. Brutus, I hope you are ready, because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Brutus, how's it going?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
All right, it's good. I don't know how long I can talk, because it's 1:30. It's not about me, but about my neighbors. I got like paper mache walls so they can hear everything I say. So if I hear some knocking, that's probably them complaining that I need to shut the hell up and let them sleep.
We'll try to be quiet.
Yeah, I'll try not to talk too loud, because I'll probably be annoying to them then. But I do believe in the Quran. I believe in the Testament, like the Christian Bible. I also believe in the Old Testament from the Jews. I'm pretty much a universalist, I would say. But yeah, I do believe in the Quran. So if I'm not sure if that qualifies me as a Muslim, but I think it does. I
So
think
you
that
believe in them simultaneously?
yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't see a contradiction between it. I see it as a continuation.
Okay. I'm not going to challenge that. I mean, the Muslim in me wants to think, no, you can't be both. But
Yeah,
let's set that aside.
Yeah.
Why do you believe in that these are truthful, these scriptures?
I believe in the scriptures because I've seen it myself. And with that, I mean in the most literal sense possible. So you can believe in the scripture, like you can read it, and then you think, oh, yeah, this is what God tells me to believe, right? And you don't know what the hell that means. Like as a person, you don't really feel anything with that, right? Like you can read it and you can think like, oh, yeah, that's what God meant. But then you have to be convinced of it, right? That's as in the religious context. It's a doctrine that you have to believe what the book says. But most of what we are taught in the book itself is something that the people around us tell what it's supposed to mean. What I mean to say is that when I read the Quran, I don't read the interpretation from the tafsirs or whatever. I get the inspiration myself. That kind of sounds stupid when I say it like this, because you're obviously going to say that's what everybody's going to feel like. Everybody's got their own interpretation of something, right?
Well, yeah, but I don't want to ask you that. No, I want to ask you, so how do you know that the Quran or the scripture is the truth? You said because I saw it.
Yeah.
And can you explain what that means?
Do you know how to see with your inner eye?
Not really, no.
To be honest, I couldn't do it myself for the longest time as well. But there is an ability that you can actually see the spiritual realm within yourself.
So how do you do that?
I can't actually explain how you do it, because to me, it just happened one day. I was at a point in my life where I was just confused in my head. You know, I didn't know what to do anymore, didn't know where to go anymore. And I was just trying to find my true self, trying to find out who I was, trying to find out what reality was around me. And at one point, I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to let go of every possible preconception I have of everything. I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm not going to try to hold on to my own opinions of how things should be. I'm not going to try and be judgmental about anything. I'm just going to let it come to me and just ask, you know, like when you just ask the universe to just show you the truth, right? I'm like, I don't care. If there's nothing, that's fine. I'm fine with that too. You know, if there's absolutely nothing out there and we're just some dust flying out in space, that's fine with me too. And if there is something more, that's good too. I just want to know what that is. It doesn't matter if it's Islam, if it's some Chinese folk religion. I don't really care, as long as I just want to know.
So how did that letting go of what did you let go of exactly?
I let go of everything I thought I should be, or thought I wanted to be. Like, I don't know. I just let go of everything about myself. I just gave it all up because I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go into my job at the time. I was studying management, economics, and law. I was like, I don't want to end up as a banker, because it sounds like hell, being in a cubicle trying to like sell securities and trying to pawn off money from people with loans and stuff. It's just not my thing. I just wanted to go back to who I really was, because I felt like I really lost the connection who I was as a child. I wasn't connected with my inner child anymore. And my search to try and go back to that who I was, that opens the door to all the spiritual realm for myself. And so how would you imagine that, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the term aphantasia.
No, I don't think I am.
All right, so aphantasia means that if you close your eyes and you try to imagine something, you see absolutely nothing because you don't have any fantasy. That's what aphantasia means. It means you don't have any fantasy. So it's like kind of looking at your TV screen, but it's always off. There's nothing there. It's just a black screen the whole time. So that might be really convenient if you're trying to go to sleep. You know, it's always completely peaceful and quiet in there, but you don't imagine anything. You can't think of anything. It's just all abstract thoughts. You can hear your own thoughts. Like when I talk to myself, like if I'm talking to you now, I can talk to myself like this inside my own mind, but I don't see anything. I can't imagine my parents, or I can't even imagine something as simple as a chair or a table.
So
Or
is it that you can't imagine it in 3D space?
yeah,
But
like
you can
don't
imagine
see
the
anything.
concept. Like you
Yeah,
still think of
yes,
your parents.
yes,
Do you know what people's faces look like?
yes. Of course, you know how people look. If I recognize you, but if I were to go to sleep and like close my eyes and I would try to imagine Aladdin, I would not see your face. I would know how your face looks, but I couldn't see it.
Okay, how does that tie into finding Islam?
So when I let go of everything that bound me, basically, that's when the first time in my life I saw something inside myself. For the first time in my life, I saw some light in myself. So when I closed my eyes, there was a blinking light, like a pixel that was like beeping, just a tiny little pixel of light in the darkness. That's all I got at that point. And that was the first time for myself, because I have aphantasia, so I'm looking at a black screen at the television the whole time. There's nothing ever there. For 20 years, there was absolutely nothing for me to see inside my own mind. And when I let go of everything, there was all of a sudden one tiny blinking light.
I wonder if have you thought about maybe there's a physiological or biological reason why people with aphantasia can't imagine things, and how that could possibly change. Like it could be something in your brain that's physically changing.
Well, there's lots of theories around it. Some say it happens to some people if they suffer from trauma. Other people just don't have it. It's like there's about 20 or 30% of people that just don't have any phantasia, and that's
So
perfectly normal.
can
Some
that
people,
change for someone like midlife? Can that change?
yeah. It apparently can completely change for people. Well, it doesn't completely change for people, so it's more like a set thing for most people. Most people uh, just have it or don't have it. So, for example, artists, they have a lot of fantasia. Some artists can completely imagine the art piece they want to make and completely reproduce it from their mind onto the paper. And
Right.
some people,
Yeah.
some artists, they just go with the flow and they don't visualize it inside their mind, and they just go with the flow and draw something. And that would be something for me too. Like I can't imagine something in my mind. I would just go with the flow and just draw it, how I feel in abstract sense, how I would want to present it.
So
But
you're
to get,
saying when you let go of yourself and expectations, basically, you
yeah,
started to see a dot. You started to imagine a dot of light.
yeah, if you want to call it imagine, because it was there. For me, it was the first time ever experiencing a tiny particle of light inside my own mind.
Okay, let's.
And
I don't use
yeah,
the word imagine like in a derogatory way or anything, but
no, that's fine. That's
can
fine.
can we imagine if what you saw, you say that you saw it very clearly,
Yeah.
what you saw, that's what people without aphantasia see or imagine.
Yeah, I imagine that. I don't know. I can't imagine what other people imagine.
Yeah, but I'm saying what you say that you saw very clearly.
Yeah,
What if people with aphantasia, what they see very clearly is
yeah.
like their imagination is your equivalent of what you saw very clearly?
Can you rephrase that?
So say, for example, that you saw very clearly that dot, that speck of light.
Yes.
And I am someone without aphantasia. I can right now imagine that speck of light in
Yeah.
3D space in my mind, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see it just as clearly. But to you, because you have no precedent for it, you see it with such clarity. To me, it's I imagined it. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah. Absolutely. That's what I would assume that would be your perspective on it, right? And
Yeah.
so, and from my perspective, for me, it was like for 20 years of not seeing anything, all of a sudden you see your TV working, and there's like just one pixel that's working, or it's still kind of broken, I could say.
Mhm.
It was, for me, it was a completely mind-changing event because I did not see anything for all those years. And so what I discovered is that when I started to pray, it just pray, like meditation, like a Buddhist meditation or just regular prayer. Every time I prayed, that little dot of light became bigger and bigger and bigger, And eventually it became as big as the moon and just continuously grew. The more I prayed, the more it grew. And as I prayed for maybe like 12 hours a day for a couple of months, it eventually evolved beyond that until it like completely encompassed all I could see.
So inside your head, when you imagine things now, you can imagine a lot of light.
Yes.
Do you see that in your visual field, like when your eyes are open, or is it just like,
It remains when I see my eyes open, yes.
so if you were looking at the monitor right now, you would also see light on top of it?
Before it will be.
Before it? You mean like behind the monitor?
No, before the monitor.
Okay, so closer
It
to
would
your
appear
eye.
as if the images are inside my own eye.
Have you ever considered that it might be a visual problem?
Of course, I've considered that.
Okay. And I'm not asking as if you've never thought of it, but like, to me, this is the first thing that came to mind.
Of course,
So
that's the first thing that came to my mind too.
did you ever speak to like doctors about that phenomenon?
Yeah, and they just say, "Oh, it's probably just your imagination," and rightfully so.
Interesting.
Why? There's no way to show somebody else what you're seeing or perceiving inside your own mind.
I mean, as long as my first concern would be that maybe it's a symptom of something, right? But
Sure.
as long as you've checked that out and there's no signs of anything
There
wrong
were
that
no
you need to.
abnormalities in my brain or anything else.
Interesting. Is it something that bothers you? Like, does it get in the way of you doing things?
No, it doesn't really. I mean, well, I guess you could say, because I completely binged on trying to meditate and focus on it for the next 3 months, and well, because I was completely obsessed with the fact that I could grow it the more I prayed. But it was very important that I had the right prayer emotion, basically. If I didn't use the right emotion, it was like sort of a self-acceptance. If I didn't use that thought, that feeling, it wouldn't grow. So if you don't pray in the right way, you will not actually activate that part of yourself. That's at least from what I experienced. And the
Well,
more I used that to pray, the more everything around me started to open up. And at some point, I could see fractals. Are you familiar with that?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Those are mathematical equations related to infinity.
Are they valid mathematical equations, or is it the abstract idea of equations?
They're technically abstract. I mean, everything's kind of, in a sense, abstract, especially on a quantum mechanics level. But they are, I guess, in mathematics, they are most definitely things that exist. But beyond that, you cannot prove that those exist. But you can find fractals everywhere in nature, for example.
So you said that you had to have a specific feeling or thought
Yes.
when you're praying. Can you describe that, or what religion did it have to do with?
I wouldn't say it has to do with any kind of religion. It is basically, for myself, it was about finding acceptance in myself for who I was, and honestly loving myself in a genuine way without any preconceived notions of myself.
So
It's not something you can really explain, because it's a feeling you have to have. You cannot explain what love is to somebody that has never felt love, for example. And in my case, I had to really give love back to myself not in a way that you try to think of yourself as better than somebody else, or that you try to praise your good qualities, but it's about just accepting who you are.
So how did you tie that to specific religions, or how did you tie that to the Bible and the Quran and these other books?
So how that ties in is that as I continued to meditate, the light grew bigger, and eventually I discovered that I could kind of travel through all the fractal dimensions. And in
What does
those
that mean?
yeah, what does that mean? I guess you would have to know a little bit more about fractals themselves, because they're just mathematical equations that are related to infinity. And so they're just geometrical shapes and orbits, basically. But
No, but what does traveling through them mean? Like, how does that change your state of mind or your reality?
So all these fractals are related to each other, and they have intersecting points in geometry. and those intersecting points are related to topics or things you can find back in religion.
How's that?
All right, so
Like, are you talking about abstract feelings? Because I can have a dream, for example, where what
yes.
you're saying I can describe. I could say I saw fractals and equations and math, and it all tied to religion, and that can be an abstract feeling that I have. But does it actually, like, when you put pen to paper, does it still make sense?
Well, what do you mean still makes sense?
I mean, what you're describing is abstract feelings about things tying together, but are you able to quantify and qualify how they tie together?
I guess that would be really hard to make it concrete because I'm trying to explain how I got to this point at all. Because for myself, it took me months to really build up like the emotional energy to really bring back the imagination inside my own mind. And the more I went through building up that imagination, I'm just using the word imagination in this case because it's probably most related to how you can understand it. And so for myself, the more I build up the imagination back inside my mind, things started to appear that that I did not imagine myself. Things that just I never heard of before. So one strange story is after months and months and months of meditation, I got to a point where I could travel through, I guess you would call the imaginary world or the abstract world, whatever you want to call it. And at one point I was looking and I was just seeing a random whale. All right. I'm just seeing a whale. And then this crazy ass whale has like the earth as a globe, as a beach ball on his back. Right? Are
Okay.
you familiar with that story?
Yeah, and were
No,
you
I
familiar with
wasn't.
the Islamic narrative of that
I
before? Or?
wasn't aware of that story. For me, it was completely um, just saw it one day. You know, I was just meditating, praying, and all of a sudden you see a whale going around with a beach ball as the earth on his back. And you're like, where the hell is this shit from? I'm sorry. Am I allowed to curse in lesser manners?
That's
Or
fine.
all right. So what do I do then? I'm going on Google, man, because I'm going to go like whale. Look, with earth on his back, right? Then you find out it's a story from Islam, right? So that ties it back into Islam. But then there are also other things like I also saw,
Wait,
for
I have
example.
a sort of unrelated question.
Yeah, sure.
When did you first watch my channel?
I think about when you were first started out, actually.
Okay, well, and when did you have that experience of seeing the whale?
Oh, I've had the experience of the whale probably around, let's see, it's now 2023. Would be around 2018, 2019.
Okay, that's a close one because I have had one person on my live streams, Noon, and that's his profile picture and everything. So I was wondering if that's how it got into your head. But
No, I heard it from you after I already saw it. It was like, wow, this is kind of like a confirmation from it.
right. Did you ever see any other animals in relation to
So,
anything else?
so to stay on topic, so Noon, right, is the whale, right?
Yeah.
And it has the Arabic letter, right?
Known as
So
the Arabic letter, yeah.
Yeah. So the Arabic letter itself, when I looked at it inside during meditation, that's when I focus on that letter. That's when the whale would appear. Apparently, I didn't know I was focusing on that because it was just appearing inside my own mind. But it's not just related to Islam because when I meditated further, I also found out that it's connected to the same Noon letter is also Ra, Ra's boat that goes on the eternal ocean, right?
Talking about Egyptian mythology?
Yeah, Egyptian mythology. And then you see Ra riding on his boat, which is the letter Noon.
So,
so you might say, oh, do you believe in like Islamic religion? I guess, sure, yeah, I saw that whale, but I mean, it's just one tiny story. I also saw Ra on the boat. And to be honest, I think Egyptian religion is fucking batshit insane.
But you think there might be some truth to it because it's similar to your visions?
Well, I've seen it, so I guess there's some truth to it, I guess, but I'm not going to tie myself down to what Egyptian mythology says, for example.
Could it be that it's more of the sharpshooter fallacy? Like you see a pattern or you see something, and then once it what was it? Once it conforms to a pattern that already exists, then you circle around it and you say it fits exactly. Like, you might see other animals with other planets or something else, but there's no specific mythology about it, so you didn't draw a circle around it and say this fits exactly. You know what I mean?
Well, I didn't know about the whale, for example. I had absolutely no idea about that previously. There are definitely things I knew about, and I would see those, I guess. You could say that I imagined them, or that they are recurring images that would appear in front of me. That's definitely a valid argument you can make for that, of course.
No, that's not what I mean. I don't mean that they were induced, but more like you might continue to see things that are seemingly unrelated or seemingly random, and then if you go and search and Google or whatever other search method you look for, what does this thing mean? And then you see it in some mythology, therefore you must have seen this thing from the mythology, rather than you just saw something unrelated and it happens to be in mythology, you know?
Oh, you mean, so for example, the whale could just be something I imagined and was the earth on his back, specifically
Yeah.
the beach ball, and it could just be a coincidence, for example, right?
Yeah, or more like every other thing that you imagine that doesn't seem to be significant in mythology, you don't register in your head as a miss. Like this seems like a hit, right? Like it can't be a coincidence. This is too big of a coincidence. But it's maybe because you're not factoring in every time you imagine things that aren't a hit.
Sure. Absolutely. That's definitely a possibility. And I would hold to that same idea if it happened maybe a few times. But once you get to like dozens of times, it starts becoming a different ball game altogether, I think.
Dozens of times with like different religions.
Yeah, because I'm not restricted to just seeing things from one religion. I also see stuff from the Old Norse gods, for example, but also things from Japanese and Aztec and even African, like the whole world. I
But
see
what I'm
things from
saying is,
every world.
do you ever imagine things that aren't in mythology?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But that's what I'm saying. If you imagine things that aren't in mythology and you Google them and no results, no mythology results, then it's not a hit. But sometimes you imagine things that you Google them
Right.
and it is a hit.
So sometimes I see things that I don't find in mythology, but there's plenty of stuff that's lost in mythology too. So once I was seeing something and I just didn't know where it was from, and I couldn't Google it either because I just couldn't find anything about it. And so, for example, once I was looking and I saw a woman drowning in an ocean, right? That seems completely unrelated, and I couldn't find anything from it because it's a very specific kind of thing. And if you Google it, you'll find all kinds of weird search results. It'll be completely different things that you're trying to find out, right? And there's probably like 30 different other stories that are related to it, but maybe not in the same way that I perceived it, for example. And the story was apparently about an ancient, I'm not sure if it's Babylonian, Sumerian, but there's a story about El saving a drowning woman. And that's the same story I witnessed. I also, for example, I saw the story where Marduk blows back the winds of Tiamat into her own mouth.
So I have a question about these visions that you see. How does this, I don't know if you would call it the ability or the perception of you seeing these things, how does it affect how you live your day-to-day life?
I would say not that much, really. I'm a pretty down-to-earth guy, I would like to hope. I do keep this stuff away from other people, of course.
Why is that?
Why do you think that is? Do you
'Cause
think you
you-
can talk about this kind of stuff with normal people? No, you can't. Can't
'Cause,
talk about that stuff.
Can you spell it out for me? Like, are you worried that they would think what?
But you can spell it out for me. That sounds way nicer.
Are you worried that they would think that this is crazy?
Of course.
Are you worried that this is crazy?
No.
What makes you confident that it is actually some higher perception of truth and not your mind playing tricks on you?
Well, it could be my mind playing tricks on me. I always keep that thought open. But why would I automatically assume that it is?
Yeah, no, I don't think you should automatically assume anything, but I mean, I right now automatically assume that everything I'm perceiving around me is real, right?
Yes, but
And
it could be that you're actually in a simulation right now and everything around you is fake.
I could be
That is
deluded. Yeah, that is possible, and
that's
I could also be deluded about things on a smaller scale. Like, for example, depending on my mood, I might not notice the amount of cat hair on my desk, right? Even
oh
though I'm
yeah.
looking at the same light waves, reflecting
Mhm.
off of that. So, but do you not worry about not like, how do you ground yourself in knowing what reality is?
Well, you don't really know what reality is, but you just go with the flow, right?
I guess.
I mean, there's no point in me arguing whether this reality is real or not. It is perceived as real and it is experienced as real. Therefore, I might as well treat it as real.
So,
Even if it were all fake, the experiences you still have are still real to you.
mhm.
Therefore, they are, as in essence, a part of reality. There is no duality of reality and uh, simulation. They are both the same thing. They are not opposites. They are the one same thing. So even if you are living in a simulated reality, that is still an experience that is real to you as a person.
Well, do you? I understand what you're saying. Do you? How do I ask this?
You can be as blunt as you want. I really don't have any personal reservations.
So, say you and I, like, say I'm an example of someone who doesn't have such visions,
Yeah.
and you do. How different is our behavior when it comes to practical things and like everything in life? Aside from the things that have to do with how we feel, how we are alone in our head, what we think about, like when it comes to, like going to work, doing things, how different would you and I be?
I think we'd be extremely alike, Aladdin. Extremely alike. I am no different than the person I was maybe like 15, 20 years ago. I used to be extremely atheist, then I went more like agnostic, and then I just let go of both atheism and agnosticism, and everything was like, just I don't care anymore. It's like just want to find my true self, regardless of everything else around me. That was one of the
So
hardest things to do, to truly let go of everything.
it sounds like it's helped you somehow understand yourself better and have a better acceptance of yourself, even though I might not understand it. Um, how has it affected your views on morality, for example?
Morality. I think it's very subjective to every person, of course. Like
But I mean, your views, like since having such visions, how has it affected your views on morality?
I really don't like to judge people. Like I can still be a complete asshole to people because I'm not a perfect person. People can annoy me. I'm not gonna judge them. And like the guy before, he
No,
was very vehement about how Islam is a truth, right? I don't think you can say that. I don't think he is justified to say that because he might be wrong. I might be wrong. Maybe anything I've seen inside my mind could be an illusion or trick played on myself.
it's good to have that level of self-awareness and willingness to review your position on things and your views. And I'm less asking, what defines your morality and are you a good person? Are people good? It's more like, how has this journey affected your morality system? Or has it at all? Or has it not changed who you are,
It has made me
externally?
it has made me completely rethink how to handle morality itself. Morality is a social construct for the most part. Something like the rules we play by to make things appear fair to us. Fair to us, I mean. And in that sense, morality can be quite subjective. And I don't think, I do believe that, like when you said for the guy with the tax, one guy wants to increase the tax, another guy wants to decrease the tax, and they can both completely hold that belief in earnest in their heart. They can both believe that, and they might even both be right. and they could also both be wrong. There is no absolute answer you can give to that. It's a choice you make between people.
And you think that this journey, the spiritual journey of yours, has made you come to that conclusion, or that's how you thought about it before?
No, I was a really kind of judgmental asshole before, honestly. I used to think that what I know was the absolute truth and that's the way we should go, and I just let go of that because I'm not right. I'm usually not right, and when I interact with people, oftentimes I'm just completely wrong about them too, and I just have to accept that. And that's okay too, you know. It's okay to be wrong sometimes and learn from your mistakes. And it's especially beautiful when you learn that your preconceived thoughts about somebody are just completely off the mark.
That's interesting. I mean, I was gonna take this call expecting to talk to a Muslim. I wouldn't define you as a Muslim, obviously, but I was still interested to learn about your experience because I might have heard of aphantasia before, but you know, crossed my mind and I moved on, and then I imagined something else, pun intended. But I never got to speak to someone who has it, and now may not have it to the same extent.
Yeah, it's basically almost completely gone, my aphantasia. And now even when I just look at things, the aphantasia is or my imagination is still playing in the background, basically.
So do you still like? Are you able to now imagine things in 3D space aside from your visions?
So it's kind of hard to describe because I'm working in the same space as a fractal itself, and so I can only imagine things in certain spaces. It's like certain parts of the TV screen work, and other parts are still in production, basically.
Interesting.
Because I've been working on this for years by now, constantly meditating and praying and trying to increase my ability to move and use my own imagination inside the imaginary sphere, you could say. But at one point, you'll start to look and read verses in other scriptures, and you'll see that those things that they're talking about refer to things in the mental space, the things that are happening inside one's own mind. So you could say, for example, that Christ, for example, right? He gives sight to the blind and he makes them hear again, right? You heard that, right? So you can
Sure.
say,
Yeah.
Christ literally physically healed people so they could see again. Right? That's one option you could take as a possible answer to that verse. Or you could say, in my case, he gave me sight back inside my own mind. I could see things in my own imaginary world for the first time.
You can easily interpret a lot of verses and sayings into, you know, and metaphors and parables into things that apply to our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's the same way with art. You can look at a painting and think, well, this is about this emotion or that emotion. And to me, I know that's not the case that you're making, but to me, it says nothing about the truthfulness of that, you know, verse or its truthfulness as a universal or divine thing, and more about our ability to see ourselves in everything.
Sure. But Aladdin, let me ask you this. What evidence do you need to believe?
In what?
To believe.
In what?
In what?
Yeah.
And that there is something more than just the things you see in front of you right now.
That's too vague because
It's not too vague.
it is very
I'm
vague.
not
because,
asking you to become a Muslim. I'm not asking you to become a Christian. I'm not asking you, like you proclaim yourself to be agnostic, right? So what would it take for you to become Gnostic, to actually know and experience?
like, what would it take for me to believe in a God? Is that what
Yes.
you're asking?
Yes.
I feel like, and this seems like a cop-out answer, but I don't mean to
It's
use
fine.
it as a
I've
cop-out answer.
heard it all myself. I've been through it all myself.
I think that God would know how to demonstrate it in a way that not just appeals to me, or not only I can see in my imagination or in my third eye, or something that I would understand, but it would also be something that can be communicated to other people, especially if there's some consequence that depends on it. So there's a lot of ifs concerned, you know, if that God wants to prove that it exists and also wants worship or else so and so, that's different than just the God convincing me that it might exist maybe, or that there's maybe something in the unseen realm, or a dimension that I'm not aware of. So it's hard to answer that question, except that God would know how to demonstrate that.
But should he?
Should he what? Should he demonstrate that?
Yes. What
For
if his
it?
intention was never to show that? What if?
I have no contest. Like I don't say that if God exists or if an entity exists, it must show itself. Maybe it doesn't. I don't think it's something that we can, if they're sorry, what was it? If then else. I don't know.
Sure. For example, when I was very atheist or very agnostic, I didn't even want to experience anything of that either. For myself, it was, the science is everything there is, and that's all there is, for example. And anything else is just the imaginary, right?
No, I think it's more that, at least for me, repeatability and demonstrability, being able to demonstrate things, is what I can count on. Individual experiences and metaphysical, imaginary experiences, I might to some extent believe that I've perceived them, but I wouldn't believe that they're as factual and real as things that can be demonstrated and repeated.
Yes. It relies on the things you can directly relate to yourself, right?
Yeah, it's very
You can
subjective,
physically interact with it, right?
and also I would have to, I would have to also question my own sanity, because I am aware of how, people can hallucinate, people can dream, and not to call someone who has visions insane per se, but I don't know to what extent I can trust just that I saw something, therefore it's real. If it's demonstrable, if I can get other people to corroborate, if I can repeat the experiment, that gives me more confidence in it.
Yeah, but not everything is demonstrable, or let's say, for example, your emotions, right? You cannot prove that you actually have a certain emotion, and yet we all accept that they exist. If you're sad, you just show it on your face, right? But we don't actually know if it's real. You could be a complete psychopath and just imitate it. It could be a mimicry,
But most
right? But
people aren't good at imitation. Like most people are like, I think I can pick up somewhat decently on someone's genuine emotions, but even if I'm not, I'm going by the presumption that most people are being honest, and there are people who are not being honest, but it's a risk I have to take. But we can demonstrate that most people, are their statistics, that when people feel that way, their face does this, their sweat does this, and so on.
exactly, but you still wouldn't know if that's actually what they're feeling.
You wouldn't know for certain, but you
No,
can
that's what I'm trying to say.
can
You wouldn't know for
guesstimate.
certain. So you guesstimate. Now let's say that there are more people than just me who have the same experience, right? Then you can say, oh, it's just a statistical anomaly, or it's just coincidence, or anything. But at what point does it become reality then? At
How,
what
if
point will you
do
accept
you have
it, for
a
example?
method? Well, do you have a method of getting other people to see that?
As I can only try and let people do the same thing I did. And I don't actually recommend people do that, because it was an extremely hard journey, and it requires you to literally give up everything. Everything you ever wanted, everything you ever thought you needed, you have to let go of it. Everything.
It's yeah, I don't really know what to say to that, because if it's demonstrated, repeatable, if it's measurable, then I can maybe start to have more confidence that it's actually speaking to the truth of things.
If it's only things you can see inside your own mind, like many of the prophets and those crazy people in the books, basically, they have those visions, right? So if you experience the same visions, you can either say, oh, well, I'm crazy, which is a completely valid argument. And I definitely think a lot of people actually go crazy with that idea, because once you experience something like it, it's not something that's just, it's not going to keep you grounded. There's probably a lot of people, when they have like a vision or experience, they completely get absorbed into their specific religion. If a person sees something in the spiritual realm, for example, like a Christian sees God on a throne, for example, then they get completely absorbed by just that experience.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're getting at here.
Yeah, maybe going a bit of a tangent there.
But yeah, I
But-
mean, I like what I at the end of the day, I'm not really trying to challenge your. I mean, I don't know if I can. I don't know if there's a way for you to ascertain what of what you're seeing is real and what isn't. I've tried to ask some questions to see, how I could understand it, and obviously I'm struggling to because I'm not seeing it. But what I care about the most is that you're in your day-to-day life, you're doing fine, and that you've checked that there's nothing that is like a ticking time bomb of something that needs to be addressed in terms of a physiological problem, like a hormonal or I don't know, some kind of tumor or something. You've gotten all that checked, right?
yeah, I'm perfectly normal.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to hear that, and as long as you're not like harming yourself or anyone else, yeah, I don't know what much else I can say to challenge your beliefs here.
Yeah, because my belief is not based on reading a piece of scripture and then saying, "Ah, yes, this is my religion now." For example, for the guy before us that came, as you said, his religion is exactly the same as a Christian would perceive it. For example, he could say like, "Oh, well, yeah, it's because I'm the chosen one. That's why I believe. And if you don't believe, that's because you're not chosen one. It's not in your nature to be a Muslim, for example, right? And you're actually a bad person if you're not a Muslim, right?"
Hmm.
And he can't know if he's right or not, right?
Yeah.
The same way the Christian would say, "Oh, the Muslims are obviously corrupted and they're false and whatever." But there's also the third option. They're both just wrong, right?
But you also simultaneously think that all religions or several religions can be true, right?
I would say in the most basic principles that their origin is correct, but as time progresses, people who do not have the ability to see in the spiritual realm, they start making shit up basically because they don't have the ability to see in the spiritual realm. Like the story you told before about Al-Qidr, right? That story is actually talking about something that happens in the metaphysical, not about the physical reality. And so you can only understand that story in the sense of the metaphysical. If you don't have that ability, you start making shit up.
So
You start
who in the chain of narration, like God sent it to Muhammad, right? Or
right.
like who made the shit up in that example?
The
Like, was it
scholars.
Muhammad? Because Muhammad was telling the story as if it happened.
There's multiple versions of the same story, right?
Right,
So the
but
story was
like
story.
from the Quran, right? Like that's what
Yeah,
Muhammad said that God said, that
yeah,
Jibril said that God said.
yeah.
So in the Quran, it's not mentioned as a metaphorical thing. It's mentioned as remember when this happened, right? So how
Yes.
do you know that it's metaphysical in the Quran? Like that, did Muhammad get it wrong and say it as if it's a real event when it actually was metaphysical?
It's in the Quran itself does not tell you when something is metaphysical or physical, because you're supposed to understand implicitly when it is and when it isn't.
How are you supposed to understand that?
You don't. You don't understand it until you do. It sounds kind of retarded because it obviously does, and I can
It
fully
sounds
recognize that
circular.
it does. What's that?
It sounds circular.
Mm,
Like you only know that it's metaphysical when you know that it's metaphysical.
I can show you like an algebra equation, right? And you can write that algebra equation down, and you can repeat that algebra equation, and you can continue to write that same algebra equation without ever knowing how you got to the correct answer, right? Because you're just copying something, but
I
you
don't
don't.
think it's then it's equivalent example here. Because I mean, what's the criteria for determining if something in the Quran is or some other book is metaphysical or literal?
You'll know. Like I used to be when I read the Quran or the Bible, and I would try and make up every possible alternative answer I could find to give meaning to that verse, right? I'm like, oh no, they're trying to how would I say it? they're trying to say something else than besides what the verse is saying. And this is when I was agnostic or when I was atheist, for example. I would just try and find a most humanitarian kind of answer as to why that verse or something was in that context. But when you actually experience the spiritual, it's a completely different story, because then the stories are happening inside your own mind.
So your criteria for figuring out if something is metaphysical, like the story of Al-Khidr, is you just
Yes.
know it if you see the metaphysical.
You will instantly recognize that you have experienced the same thing yourself.
So that is a bit circular, but what is the metaphysical lesson or string of the plot from that story?
You mean what the point of the story is?
Sure, yeah. If it's metaphysical and not literal, what was
It
the
shows
point
that you're
of
not
story?
alone. It
The
shows that
story
you're
about
not the only one.
Musa and Al-Khidr and killing the child, it's about not being alone?
Yeah.
How's that?
You see, you're all Musa. You're Musa. And Al-Khidr is part of you. We're just parts of infinity itself. All the stories are stories about ourselves and the things that we experience in our own mind.
That's an assumption. Let's assume they're both parts of me. What does the story teach me about myself if Musa and Al-Khidr are parts of me?
You're trying to find the truth, right, in life. You
Yeah.
want to know the truth, right?
Yeah.
That's the wisdom you're trying to find. You're Musa that says, like, I have found everything I have been able to find. Show me more.
So what's the metaphorical, like, what's the lesson from the metaphysical Musa and the metaphysical Al-Khidr killing the metaphysical child?
You want to know the exact stories. You want to know what exactly the meaning behind them all is, right?
Yeah, no, like that's a story that you see as a metaphysical thing because you just see it. What am I supposed to learn from that story?
The parts of yourself, right? Some parts of yourself are not meant to be. Some desires in yourself are not fruitful for your future self, are not who you truly need to be.
But who decides what I need to be? So the kid, you're saying that the kid is the
Yes.
part of me that I shouldn't be.
Yes.
And I should kill it preemptively. That's the lesson that you got from that.
You can't take it with you.
And you see that based on, like, and you see that as a good thing rather than letting that part grow and figure it out.
If it's the kid represents the part of you that does not accept reality as it really is.
But that's not, like, in the story, the kid is not even in not accepting reality. The kid is faultless and died before getting to the decision point.
As a kid, it was, yes, but eventually it would grow up and it would keep you away from who you're who you need to become, who your true self is.
So why would God deliver the story? Like, if it means what it's supposed to mean to you, why deliver it in such a grotesque and haphazard and almost sloppy way?
My personal view on this is, I don't know if it is the truth or if it is. I personally see it that the stories are intentionally vague, so you can pretty much point out the idiots who believe some absolute garbage. Because all the people who believe that that story is physical, they are some of the most atrocious, most horrendous, and most morally distasteful people that exist.
I wouldn't make that. I wouldn't say that so confidently. I think there are a lot of good people who believe in very nonsensical things and very literal things that they shouldn't really go with. It doesn't make them
Sure,
bad people.
everybody has the potential to change and become a better person.
No, even say a Muslim who does believe that story is literal and believes the killing of the child was justified, I still ascertain that they could be a good person who's just very wrong about that.
I meant more in to say that the people who try to justify that story, like the scholars try to do that, they resort...
Even everyday Muslim who try to justify that. I think there's more factors that go into it than just them being good or bad people or morally depraved people. I think there's social reasons. There's like the bias that I already have to justify what I currently believe.
Absolutely, yes. Lots of Muslims have to believe the stories they're told, otherwise they're, what's it, a kufr, right? then you're not a true believer. So you're
It's a
forced
fraud.
by the in-group behavior to conform.
What I'm
If you
saying
say
is,
you don't
yeah,
believe.
what I'm saying is like, it doesn't make sense, that one plausible explanation that you said, that God made it seem like such a ridiculous story to weed out the people who would take it literally.
That's my personal perspective. It's not something I necessarily strictly hold on to. It's just my personal perspective. I cannot say if that's true or not.
Yeah, I still
But
think
that's
that would be a
personally what I
very,
think is a good answer. But I wouldn't hold on to it, for example.
yeah,
I could be
I
entirely
still
wrong
think
on that.
it's a reach. I mean, there's a lot of hypotheticals and a lot of very far-fetched ideas for me to accept your point of view, but you're not making statements about it being obviously clear, or like, inductive reasoning, like this therefore that. So I can't really, fault you for that. But at the end of the day, it's hard for me to see things the way you do.
Of course, because you don't have the same. You haven't seen the same things I have seen. And
Yeah.
I can never hold that against you. I can never tell you that you should believe because I have seen or something, I can't do that because I have been in exactly the same shoes you are, just in the past.
Yeah. Well, this was an interesting talk. Is there anything that you want to ask me before we wrap up?
Well, like I asked before, like what would it really take for you to believe? Like what is it like for myself, I didn't believe, right? And I just allowed everything to come to me. And then I started seeing visions, right? And then you start questioning yourself, like, am I going nuts? When can I actually believe in myself? The things that I see, the things that I experience, when are those actually true? Because I might as well just throw it into the garbage bin and say, oh, it's just my imagination. It's just something I conjured up in my mind. At what point do I accept for myself that what I see is actually the truth that is being revealed to me? I can just as well throw it in the garbage bin, right?
So
I could just say,
I don't know how to answer your question. What would it take for me to believe in what exactly in that, in visions that I'm seeing to be indicative of something?
if you were to see visions, right? Straight up stories from the Bible or from the Quran or from maybe even Chinese folklore or whatever, at one point would you accept that the things you're seeing, even the details that you get in a story that you've never heard of before, but then you find them back in scripture, do you start believing then?
If I were to somehow methodically prove that, because there's a lot of ambiguity about that. Like, when you wake up from a dream, and in that dream you knew certain things to be connected, you knew certain facts, but when you try to verbalize them, it doesn't really make sense, or it doesn't connect. That's the state of mind that I think you might be thinking of. So if I'm
As
in that
dream,
state of mind, sorry,
as dream logic, right? That's completely crazy sometimes.
it's not about it being crazy. It's more that you're convinced, in dream logic, let's call it that, you're convinced of certain connections, but when you try to sound them out, you don't actually know how these connections were real. Like, I can say, oh yeah, I was a basketball coach on Pluto, and I continue the dream, and that's fine. But when I wake up, and because I'm a basketball coach on Pluto, obviously I had this kind of shoe. When I wake up, I'm like, wait, none of that actually ties together. I don't even remember half the details that were in it. The point is, I could have this dreamlike state about a story, and if I continue to be in that dreamlike state and I then read the story in another source, my brain will make all the connections and be like, oh yeah, that detail, I saw that. So I don't know if I can trust. I would have to actually see that happen multiple times. I would have to actually record these details down on paper before I open the story and verify, and then I would feel like there's something very freaky going on. But I would be in the collecting data phase for a long, long time.
Yeah. And I've been in that same phase basically for years already.
Doesn't sound easy. I don't envy you.
It definitely wasn't easy in the beginning because you really start questioning your own sanity at some point. But at no point am I actually collapsing. My personality isn't collapsing. I'm just the same old guy I was before. I'm just seeing things for the first time. I would probably more describe it as like you glitched out of reality, and all of a sudden you start seeing the matrix that's behind everything. And that's really all there is. Then you can try and ignore it. You can try and say, oh, well, it's just, a glitch, or maybe my brain is not functioning properly. Or you start seeing the patterns. You start seeing that everything that's being talked about in every kind of scripture, they're talking about the same things. And then you start realizing.
I'll tell you something. Like, to answer your question,
Yeah.
What would it take for me to believe? So, what would it take for me to believe that such patterns, such visions, such seeing the matrix is actually real and not a product of my imagination or a dreamlike state? What would take for me to believe it is if I can transfer that knowledge or information into something understandable and quantifiable. Like,
You mean
say
something like scripture? See, scripture
not
isn't
just about no, it's not just about lessons and even if I was, say, like, that like state or meditative state makes me see, or that's me seeing connections in human behavior and making some observations about family and relationships and inner peace and all that kind of stuff, and writing it into verses. That still doesn't necessarily mean to me some kind of ultimate truth that's above this dimension. No, I'm talking, if I can see the matrix that's behind everything, as you said it, and I can quantify it on paper. And
how would
then
you
explain
quantify it though?
I don't know. That's how I know that it's actually real, if I can quantify it
So
somehow.
for myself, it's because I started seeing fractals, right? Those are mathematical equations that only exist in the abstract mathematical world, right? So when I
what
start
do you do with
seeing
those
those,
fractals? Like,
so,
are those fractals, like, can you make anything with them? Like, can
oh
you
yeah,
show it to someone
totally.
who?
You can look up the Mandelbrot fractal, for example. Are you
No,
familiar
I
with
mean,
it?
like, what does it, like, not just that it exists, but what can you do with that information? How do you transfer it to someone who doesn't see the world the way you see it, into a useful way? Like, can you
That's
come
what
up with a
that's what
solution for
scripture is
something?
about. That is exactly what scripture is about. It's about transferring that knowledge that everybody that experiences the same thing, when they experience the spiritual, that's where scripture is actually from. It's to show you that you're not the only one that is experiencing this.
I think scripture can speak to can possibly speak
Absolutely.
to deeper things about human relations and inner peace and things like that, without even having anything to do with the metaphysical. It's just
Absolutely.
it's an understanding of how humans operate, and then rephrasing it in another way. That's not really the kind of metaphysical truth that you're talking about still.
When you start seeing a whale with a or a skippy ball on his back, you start thinking you're gone crazy, right? And
Probably.
that's yeah, probably, until you find out it's just a story in some mythology, right? But somebody was careful enough to record that story so you would know that you're not the only one that's receiving the same signal.
But there are a lot of other stories that you may be seeing in these visions that aren't from a religion, and you wouldn't take that as evidence that, okay, this discredits the whole, this is a bigger truth thing.
There are so many religions I haven't even researched. It could very well be that the things I've seen are actually in another religion, but I haven't seen them. And then you can make the sharpshooter analogy. Oh, well, you just tie these two individual things together. You can always make that argument. But at what point do you let go of that argument and accept that there's also possibly another argument? That it might just be that all of the scriptures are just a recording of people experiencing things in the spiritual, and they're passing this knowledge on to the next generation.
Because the scriptures actually contradict each other. Like, in an abstract way, you can try to see it that way, but the scriptures really do contradict each other in a very clear way. So unless you're saying that also this contradiction is a test somehow from the God, it doesn't make any sense. The scriptures do contradict each other.
Can you give me a specific example?
Like, claims about Jesus in the Quran and claims about Jesus in Christianity can be very different.
Absolutely. Right? But there's a whole doctrine behind Islamic views on Christ that are just wrong.
Right.
And
but
at the same time,
how can they simultaneously be about the same truth vision?
And there are at the same time many presuppositions and doctrines in Christianity that are wrong too. So you have two wrong mainstream religions who have deviated so much from the original message that they're both wrong. And then there will be indeed contradictions between each other. But if you let go of all of that and just go with the original scripture, which might be really hard because Quran itself is pretty heavily edited after a couple of centuries with all the harakas and stuff.
What original? Do we have any original scripture of anything? Like, do we have
That's a good-
anything that came down from God or visions of a prophet or whatever, specifically exactly how they wrote it? We don't have any of that.
No, you're gonna have to trust on it, and you can only really trust on it when you experience the things yourself.
Yeah, that's not how I can determine the truth, but I think, yeah, we just have to agree to disagree on that.
No, of course, I completely agree. If you because you haven't experienced it, and if I was to tell this own story to myself 10 years ago, yeah, well maybe 12 years ago, I would laugh in my own face. I am that guy that laughs at everybody that would say this kind of shit.
It's,
I am
yeah,
that.
it's
I
not
am
really
that.
about laughing at it. It's more about
No, but I mean,
can
I
we
would
reliably demonstrate that it is true? We can't.
exactly. No, you can't.
No.
And I'm not gonna try to make the argument that I can, because I can't. I can't prove to you that the visions I've seen are all related to mythology.
Right.
And because I can see those visions, I can see the narrative structure that's being built up in the spiritual realm that follows these events.
Mhm.
So I've seen gods like Odin, Quetzalcoatl, Ra. They're all really, when you see it, it's really just an experience you're having, right? Because you're seeing it as if it's right in front of you. But at the
Oh,
same time, it's not in front of you. It's like your imagination is showing it to you. But
I'll
at the
have to
same
take your
time,
word for it. Yeah.
yeah, you have to take my word for it because I can't prove it to you.
Yeah.
But the only way that for myself that I can validate these experiences is by reading the scripture and seeing that the things that I'm experiencing have already been written down by somebody else before me.
Okay.
That's the only way that I, for myself, can actually cope with the fact that this is happening. If there was no scripture at all, if there were no things written down by people before me that wrote down these same stories, I would think I would be going mad. But because it has been written down, I know I'm not the only one that's going through this journey.
I'm not qualified to speak on any of this. So I would just say that if, and again, to sound blunt but not judgmental, if that narrative that you're actually seeing some kind of higher truth that's all related together keeps you feeling saner than if you just thought it was all unrelated visions, then I guess you should continue feeling that way, as long as you still stay grounded with reality in a way that doesn't harm you or someone else. And it doesn't sound like that's the case. So if you need to believe, or if you want to, or if you're convinced, or if it seems appealing to you to believe that it's all related somehow, and it's less scary than it being just unrelated hallucinations, then I guess that's the way that you live your life.
Sure, that's trying to coddle me with love, I would suppose.
I mean, that's that's as blunt as I can put it, because obviously I can't diagnose you with anything. I don't have any expertise to say anything. I know that you have, like, your experience is valid to you, no matter what I think at the end of the day. Even if you are some diagnosis that no one has found out, how you feel about it matters, right? You're experiencing your life. So what matters to me is that you're experiencing your life in a way that is best for you and people around you. And it sounds like you have some kind of handle on that. So that's what I care about.
In the end, I'm no different than the person I was before. The point I'm making is that from my perspective, from my new perspective, the same thing could apply to you. Like, as long as you're okay with not actually being able to completely understand the truth, you're still able to function properly. You know, if that's the way you can cope with life, with not completely accepting everything, that's also fine for me. If you don't want to experience the universe or the fractal infinity, because the fractal infinity, there's some dark, disgusting nihilism in there, man. Because if you really
It's
touch
not that I don't
infinity,
want to experience these things.
oh,
It's
trust me,
that,
most people
yeah,
don't. You know the whole Cthulhu thing. You know, people don't want to. There's some knowledge is too dark to completely comprehend, and it will drive you insane, right? You know
I
that
think
Cthulhu meme.
I think I know where you're coming from. It's just that what you're describing is so far from what I've experienced. I don't see the appeal of ever going there. And like you said, it's not easy anyway to think that way. So yeah, it doesn't seem appealing to me in any way. But I will continue to know that there are limits to the certainty that I have over my beliefs. I know that I could be
So
wrong about what I
can
believe.
I point something out?
Hmm.
So you said it's not appealing to you, right?
Yeah.
So you're not experiencing it because it's not appealing to you. You choose not to experience it,
No, I've experienced part of what you're describing, or like
and
some
you chose
vibe.
not
No,
to
no, no.
see it further.
Here's how I experienced that. It was using psychedelics, and I'm not encouraging people to do that, but I'm saying that's the closest I ever experienced to what you're saying. And to me, it was more like my brain trying to make sense of jumbled up neurons, you know, under the influence of something, than seeing some higher truth. So it's not that I don't want to experience the truth. It's more like, to me, it feels like too much of messing with my brain chemistry and straying away from sanity, that I wouldn't want to try it out. But if it happens to me the way that it happens to you, like you saw a light and it started becoming bigger, like that's circumstances that I never lived. So
So
I
it
don't
wasn't
know.
just a light that I grew bigger. I had to completely create mental constructs like geometrical shapes and hold them with your mind focus. And with those mental constructs, I would start to um, unpack the fractals themselves. So those are mathematical equations, but inside the fractals, there's an almost infinite amount of complexity, right? And so eventually shapes which are correspond to natural shapes in nature, such as flowers and stuff, they will naturally start to appear once you start exploring the fractal dimensions themselves. And then you start seeing that all the mathematical equations that keep our own universe together, they're all part of the same energy field. And your own
I see
mind.
it more as like abstract thoughts that manifest as I understand that there are mathematical equations. Like I've seen hallucinations, visual hallucinations. It's your brain thinks that that vibe that you're feeling, that emotion, is actually real, but when you come to put it on paper, it's not the case. So unless you can write it down as like what these fractals mean, what you can do with them, unless you can demonstrate what you're seeing, then it's more like a feeling,
I wouldn't call it a feeling because it's not necessarily a feeling you just have. It's something you literally see. You experience the fractal dimensions itself. And it's completely confusing because the fractal dimensions themselves aren't particularly well organized, I would say. I mean, there are spheres inside spheres, which then have a cube inside them, for example. And those just correspond to mathematical objects, because in the end, fractals just are abstract mathematical equations. But if we're talking about, for example, the Big Bang Theory, where everything began, right? Then there has to have been a single particle or single point of existence that then expanded. So then we're already talking about geometry.
I think we're kind of losing the plot here. The point is, unless we can quantify it, right? Not just say that you've seen fractals and the fractals make sense. To me, it just feels like an extension of a dreamlike state. Feeling that you saw fractals, feeling that they actually add up and they actually make sense. But that's not to deny that you're experiencing them. I'm just saying, if the case was me, if you're asking me what would it take for me to believe, it would be to be able to quantify these things and actually see that they're linked to the existence somehow.
Well, in the most simple sense, everything that we see around us right now is made up of fractal constructs. Everything in our physical reality is related to fractals. Many scientists will say that reality itself might just be a fractal.
Well, I can't speak to that, but
No,
No.
it's just a theory. It's not proven because you cannot prove if you are living inside a fractal. That's just the simulation reality paradox. You cannot
Yeah.
prove if you're in a simulation. Like
Yeah,
there is no evidence you
we're
can give.
straying a little bit far away from the topic. I really have nothing to say about that. But yeah,
There is no proof you can give to prove to someone that they are in a simulation, right?
there isn't. Yeah, but I really have nothing to say about that and how it ties into belief in a specific God or that there's truth to visions. It's just saying that we can't be certain about anything, but I'll just have to trust my senses, I suppose.
And that's exactly what I'm doing, right? Because I'm
Right,
seeing
but
the
the
visions,
difference is
so
that
I'm
like
trusting my senses.
the senses that I'm trusting are more measurable in a sense. Like I can measure the amount of light around me and I can see that, yeah, there is a table here and I can demonstrate that, but I can't demonstrate that there's fractals and whatever mathematical patterns and
Again,
lights.
when you walk to a flower, you can see the fractal interaction of reality. When you see an ice crystal form, you can see the fractal pattern forming in front of you. You can absolutely see that fractals are an essential part of our reality. Now, you can make the argument that our entire reality is just a fractal and there is no God. You can make that argument. That's a completely valid point to take, in fact. But the fact that a fractal is infinity itself also means that consciousness exists
I think, yeah,
inside it.
I think we're really losing the plot at this point. But yeah, I hope that I answered your question, the last thing that you asked me, and I hope that this conversation was interesting for you.
Can I make one final thing? Because I wanted to kind of talk about what the guy previously said. One of the guys, critical thinker, I think.
No, because I really have to wrap this up, and I don't want to make it about a previous conversation either when the person's not here. So
I wasn't talking directly about him. I was just wanted like an argument he was making.
sure, 2 minutes.
All right. So critical thinker, he says that people don't believe because they want to follow their desires, right?
That was one thing he said.
Yeah. So people that don't believe in Islam are therefore bad people because they have bad desires, right?
Or that's one possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. But isn't the gift of heaven, the thought of having heaven, that you can go to eternal life, isn't that a physical desire as well?
Sure.
So how can we be sure that he isn't following his religion in the hopes that he is getting his reward at the end?
That still, it doesn't really contradict his position, because his desires, he might be denying certain desires in this life and only following the desires in the afterlife that God allowed him. So yeah,
Yes.
he is following desires and shallow reasons, maybe as part of, not him, but like there are many people who want to go to heaven and that's why they follow religion. That's a desire, but it's a godly approved desire. So they're fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you believe that's the God, then sure, but that's what every religion believes.
Yep. Anyway, thank you again for the conversation, and it was a long one.
Yeah,
and
sorry
I
if
hope
it took so long.
that's all right. I hope that this was an interesting conversation for you.
Sure, I hope it was interesting for you too.
Yeah. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye. All right. I want to read a few comments and then I'll wrap up. Well, first, I want to remind people, starting next week, I'm going to be doing live streams on Wednesdays. I might be away for a couple of weeks, but otherwise just Wednesdays. So every Tuesday, just check my channel. I thought this was funny. Can USA Pack said, "Focus, stop the hocus pocus." I just thought it rhymed and it was funny to me. It was like a spell. So yeah, there are a lot of people who are trying to get me to like focus on how is this person a Muslim and so on. Yeah, I know his ideas are far away from Islam. I wouldn't call him a Muslim, but that wasn't the point. Like I wasn't trying to challenge whether he's a Muslim or not. I'll let people decide that. He didn't claim to be a Muslim only. So we tried to understand what he believes. And yes, to answer LJR's question, my live streams are going to be, I think, a bit more generic. So we're going to have callers from all sorts of backgrounds rather than why do you believe and so on. We'll try that for a few Wednesdays and see how it goes. And I'm assuming that the callers are honest. That's an assumption that I always have to make. I'm assuming that the person calling me is telling me things honestly. I might start to be suspicious about certain people, but I have to assume that they're being honest with me. That's how a conversation goes. So if I have been trolled today without noticing it, thanks for pointing it out. It happens, but that's the cost you have to pay when you assume that other people are being honest. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream as much as I did. Hopefully the next ones are going to be a little bit shorter, but I certainly did enjoy it. Make sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And a special thanks, as always, to my patrons, who without them, I wouldn't be live streaming and making videos as often as I am now. So thank you once again. And as always, think critically and think for yourself.